Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're going into the second episode of our story in which Naruto befriends Sasuke and Sakura at a young age through a stroke of fate. The three then set a goal to surpass the Sannin as the strongest shinobi team and uncover a mystery about Naruto's heritage that extends beyond the limits of the elemental nations, altering the course of history forever. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel after you watch the video. Let's get started. Hokage Tower, 1,500 hours, I see, Hiruzen said as he read the latest report from a Chunin, who quickly dismissed himself from the office soon after he delivered the Hokage some good news. As soon as he left, the old monkey dropped the stoic look off of his face as he allowed himself to smile in contentment. Things started looking up for the village. It had been 9 long hard years since the fateful day that the demon fox had attacked and decimated a good part of the village. Repairs were, as of today, nearly 98%. Normally, reconstruction wouldn't have taken this long, but considering the amount of political clout and setbacks that forced Konoha to focus its efforts elsewhere, rebuilding often took a back seat, sometimes as long as 8 months. He sighed. It was truly ironic, when one thought about it. He stood in favor of ending the Third Great Shinobi World War with Iwagakure years before it actually ended once it turned into Konoha's favor. However, his teammates and his top jounin had convinced him otherwise, which, at the time, he reluctantly agreed despite his personal feelings about what he felt was just genocide wrapped up in a new box. As it turned out, in hindsight, it truly was a blessing in disguise. The Fox had wiped out a good fraction of their forces just for holding it off. Had he not given the order to decimate Iwa into unconditional surrender, there was a good chance in his mind they would have taken advantage of their moment of weakness. Even 3 years later with the Hyuga incident, they were still nowhere near equipped for war, and as such he gave in to the demands of the hidden cloud. Although this displeased a lot of the higher echelons, they didn't want a war so quickly after 2 disasters, so they reluctantly consented. But now, they had an even bigger problem that threatened the village. This time, however, it was from within. The sexagenarian allowed his mind to travel back in time to his conversation with Danzo earlier this morning. Danzo Shimura took a seat in front of his old rival, the very same chair that Irika Umino sat upon just a few moments earlier. He stared at Hiruzen with a critical eye, as if daring him to make a single mistake during their little chat. Hiruzen, Danzo began, which caused the Hokage to frown, but he said nothing. Danzo, after all, was the only person he allowed to call him by his first name so openly. Well, besides his old teammates, Koharu Udatane and Hamura Mitokado. Even then, they still rarely referred to him as that, unless it was something personal and deadly serious. Danzo took full advantage of this privilege. Mina Division has uncovered some grave news, about one of our resident noble families, the War Hawk explained, getting directly to the point. If Hiruzen had one thing to say he liked about his old rival, it was that he never wasted his time with meaningless small talk which he did not wish to have with the man. The aged Hokage raised an eyebrow, but his facial expression was neutral despite the inner turmoil of emotions he felt at the implication of what his political rival had just said. He took out his pipe, and quickly lit a piece of tobacco inside it with a small, precise katan jutsu. He took a puff before replying. "Grave, you say?" he repeated, his voice calm and in control. Danzo grimly nodded before doing several hand seals, which caused the Hokage's eyes to widen slightly. "That jutsu and believe," Hiruzen simply commanded. He felt 4 chakra signatures leave the room from the shadows as Danzo's jutsu took effect, as all sound coming from the two was virtually impossible to hear, even for the canines of the Inuzuka clan. Hiruzen narrowed his eyes. "You're resorting to using that jutsu and for my Anbu to leave. Do you mind telling me what's going on, Danzo?" he asked dangerously. He was not in the mood to play mind games with him. Scratch that, he was never in the mood to play mind games with the man. "What if I told you that I have reason to believe that the Uchiha clan wants to take the village for themselves?" Danzo flatly asked, dropping a bombshell. There was a deafening silence as the pipe in the Sandame's mouth fell out of his mouth, his jaw agape. The tobacco product fell onto his desk, spilling its dark contents all over some of the papers on his desk. Neither of the two noticed, nor would have cared if they had. Danzo. You can't be serious, the Hokage shouted in obvious disbelief at such a gargantuan piece of intelligence being dropped on him so suddenly. Danzo narrowed his eyes. Do you think I would joke about something so damn serious, Hiruzen? He proclaimed, a bit of sarcasm leaking out, feeling a bit insulted at his old rival's implication. This matter was a matter that threatened the existence of the entire village and ultimately, the power scale on a much larger level on the entire continent. The third fire shadow balled his hands up in fists as he forced himself to calm down. He took a deep breath, and sighed. What proof do you have of this? He inquired, interlocking his fingers and resting his chin on his hands. The village's darkness huffed, but nonetheless bobbed his head. I may not have complete confirmation, but it's enough for us to take the intelligence very seriously. He nodded. I take it that it was likely an Uchiha who said a bit too many words, he deduced. Danzo smirked. Your gift of insight is truly a sight to behold, Hiruzen, Danzo praised, but the Hokage knew that, at best, it was a backhanded compliment. He said nothing, which Danzo took as a sign to continue onward. One of my Naanbu overheard a few Uchiha during the police station, off-duty and intoxicated to hell and back. Were the situation not so serious, Hiruzen might have found the sight a bit comical. You know my policy with your root division, Danzo. I feel as if you're taking advantage of my generosity, the Hokage noted with a dark edge lining his voice. Officially, on record, Nagat publicly disbanded by Hiruzen, himself. However, to slightly appease his rival, he offered a compromise. He could keep his little private army, but he'd have to fund it out of his own pocket and not from the village's treasury, which was how all shinobi genin to Anbu were paid as a monthly stipend. Technically, it could be ordered around by the Sandaime, but he rarely, if ever, did so, wanting to keep them out of his hair as much as possible. He only asked that whatever Danzo did was legal, and he didn't overstep his boundaries. Danzo sneered, a bit irritated at the old monkey's hypocrisy. You send your Anbu to spy on others all the time, not to mention your Tomegain no Jutsu, telescope technique, which you use to keep track of the Uzumaki, he pointed out. He sighed, and conceded. A fair point, you make. Now, then what did they say? Danzo carefully recited everything verbatim. We all know that Itachi is our ticket to the top, you know? Yeah, we know the people at the top won't know what hit them. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow, though it was clear he felt truly disturbed at the oblique threat toward his Tiamatisa as well as himself. I see, he neutrally responded. There may be a chance I'm wrong, Danzo noted, a bit offhandedly, but alcohol is one of the world's greatest truth serums. I'd rather act now and confirm I'm wrong, than do nothing and watch Konoha be cut down, starting with the branches. Hiruzen sat in relative silence as he started to reflect off of what he'd just been told. On one hand, the Uchiha had served faithfully for the past 40 years as the civilian peacekeepers and upheld civil and common law across the village. Despite being told to move to another part of the village, from what he could tell, they didn't complain, considering to where they moved had twice as much space and allowed the clan to expand to the size it presently stood. But, then again, the Uchiha were always mysterious and kept mostly to themselves, even more secretive than their current pseudo-rivals, the Hyuga clan. Could they truly hold 4 decades worth of animosity from an edict his old sensei conjured up eons ago? They hadn't made any attempts to protest their current situation as of late, so why do it now? Did they feel shackled to the chains of destiny set forth by their Senju rivals? It was true, the clan really never got a chance to really lead the village, despite being partnered with the Senju clan over 80 years ago. There was the Shodai Hokage, who was a Senju, the Nidaime Hokage, also a Senju, himself, trained by the Senju brothers, and the Yondaime Hokage, who, by proxy, was trained by Jiraiya who was trained by him. The Senju's cycle was continuous and ongoing even after their apparent near extinction. Could he really risk ignoring it? He finally nodded his head in acquiescence. Very well, then, Danzo. I'll try to find out what I can, and until we have confirmed these allegations are false, we will treat the Uchiha as a threat quietly. However, I'm sure you also know who I want to get on this as well. Danzo knew immediately to whom he referred. You want to see the Uchiha prodigy, himself, eh? You play a dangerous game, my old friend, he warned, a bit of amusement passing through his head. Then again so do I. Hiruzen ignored his comment and stared intently at him. Say we do confirm Itho, do you say we proceed with the executions? He asked with narrowed eyes. Danzo was not amused at the insinuation, and in turn, gave the Sarutobi a death glare. Do you really think so lowly of me, Hiruzen? That I would condone the execution of those innocent and ignorant to what their elders are planning? Here, I was thinking you knew me better than anyone else. The tranquil fury that slipped through contradicted the man's stance of an emotionless tool was the best type of warrior on the battlefield. I do, Hiruzen stated matter-of-factly, eyes glinting with an ancient power that threatened to pour forth. You tend to go over the top with your zeal in protecting the village. You knew I wouldn't put up with you killing the innocent, of which I'd have to kill you, myself. The tension in the dead silent room was so thick you could slice it with a kunai, as both men were testing each other's patience and will. Unknowingly, or perhaps they did know, they released small amounts of murderous intent toward one another, a game of chicken. Who would cave first? Danzo, seemingly impressed, backed off. You win this round, Hiruzen. He refused to sneer as badly as he wanted to at the moment. He stood up. In any case, I'll keep you informed as best as I can. While you do your own investigating, I'll get to the root of this. Whether or not Danzo's pun was intentional, Hiruzen wasn't sure, but he chose not to comment and oddly nodded. I will inform Koharu and Hamura of this, at the next possible convenience, he plainly stated. While there were secrets that he, as Hokage, only knew, this was something that all of the higher-ups needed to be aware of. It was going to stay that way, too, until he deemed it necessary. The shaggy dark hair shook when the militaristic shinobi bobbed his head. I'll keep in touch, Hiruzen. Then the commander vanished out of sight. Please, don't, Hiruzen intoned bitterly with a sidelong look. He breathed out and placed both of his hands over his face in slight defeat. Just what he needed, another fucking shit storm. He needed someone. He didn't trust Danzo as far as he could throw him, which was admittedly pretty damn far, considering how powerful he was. He needed a mole, someone on the inside that could confirm what the leader had informed him. Then, it suddenly clicked as the Sarutobi's face brightened up instantly in his epiphany. What better person fit the criteria he needed than Uchiha Itachi, himself? The third Hokage sighed as he brought himself back into the present. Sometimes, he hated his job with a passion. Such unwanted and, truthfully, unneeded bullshit to deal with. He would speak with Itachi within the week, which gave him time to plan some form of action with Hamura and Koharu. He groaned. Great, I still haven't told them, yet. Just peachy, came his sarcastic reply. He sat back down and took out his crystal ball. Naruto, perhaps you'll put a smile on my face, despite the arduous road that lies before both of us? Uchiha Clan Estate, 1515 hours, Mikoto Uchiha was in the kitchen smiling to herself as she washed a dish from a meal she had fixed for Itachi, who had left earlier. But her older son wasn't the real reason she was in such a great mood. Truthfully, it was his younger sibling. Yesterday, she had been truly worried about her younger child, as he almost was never cold and hostile toward her. He had gone out on his own, and came back later that night. This morning, the boy was beaming with excitement as he genuinely smiled. Guess all that training must have made him a happy child, she giggled as she dried her hands. Suddenly, her senses went on alert as she felt 3 chakra signatures, 1 familiar, and 2 unknown. Despite being a housewife, she was still a retired jounin. Those skills just didn't leave overnight. She deduced that he was bringing new friends over, which may have explained his mood this morning. "Ka-san," she heard her younger son's voice call out, to which she smiled. "I'm in the kitchen," she yelled back, hearing her son's footsteps. Sasuke, a rosette-haired young female, and her eyes widened in surprise. Him? Sasuke had befriended him? If no one were watching, Mikoto would have been leaping for utter joy. So it seems fate would want me to keep our original promise, Kushina-chan, the Uchiha matriarch mused to herself. She then put on a motherly smile as she slightly knelt to their level. "So, Sasuke-kun, who are your new friends?" she sweetly inquired. Sasuke looked a bit embarrassed, but passed the spotlight toward his companions. Sakura shook her head. "I'm Sakura Haruno, Uchiha-san," she bowed respectfully. Mikoto waved her off. "Please, Sakura-san, call me Mikoto. You don't have to be so formal with me at any time, understood?" Sakura blushed in embarrassment, but nodded. "Of course, Mikoto-san," she replied in acceptance. The onyx-eyed female turned to Naruto, who was looking a bit shy. Mikoto frowned. "Does he know about the fox? Think I'll treat him like some of the ignorant morons we call villagers?" She dwelled to herself. She inwardly sighed, before feeling determined. She was going to make Naruto feel welcome in any way she could. "And you, young man?" she delicately questioned. Naruto looked at her wide-eyed. To her, she felt genuine. He looked into her eyes, and saw no signs of hate, malice, bigotry, or distrust. As cheesy as it sounded, Naruto wanted to hug her right then and there just for not being a tool that simply fitted in with the rest of the workbox. Naruto grinned at her. "Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki, Mikoto-san," he introduced, holding out his hand, which Mikoto gladly shook. "A pleasure to meet you, Naruto-kun," she chimed. "So, Sasuke-kun, any particular reason you bring these two all the way out to our humble abode?" She had pretty good idea why, but she wanted to hear it from Sasuke's lips. Mothers did always ask queries they knew the answer to, no? "Well," Sasuke started sheepishly, scratching the back of his head. "Well, I met these guys," he stopped, seeing Sakura's look. "Guy and girl," he corrected, which caused Mikoto to inwardly smirk. "Last night, and this morning, we went to the library to learn together." Mikoto raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like you three are a future squad in the making," she noted. The three of them looked at each other. This was the first time what was openly on all three of their minds had been brought right out in the open. After a pregnant silence, and seeing the serious looks at each other, they all nodded. There was no doubt now. Naruto spoke confidently, "Yes, it would seem so. I wouldn't have it any other way." That statement sent shockwaves down both of his companions' spines. Did Naruto think that highly of them? "Naruto-kun," Sakura thought in wonder and awe. "Well, Naruto, I'll admit it. The feeling is completely mutual," he admitted with a smile. The fact that he only knew him for only 2 days didn't matter to him. It was one of those things that you just instinctively knew what was going to be something special. The female Uchiha smiled. Kushina would be so proud if she could see them now. "So I take it you came back here for training because we have plenty of room," she deduced coolly. Sasuke groaned audibly. "You have got to stop with that mind-reading thing, Ka-san," he grated. Naruto and Sakura were totally confused, but Mikoto only laughed. "Sasuke-kun, I'm your mother. I know these things, remember?" she asked rhetorically. Sasuke only huffed, causing his own friends to laugh. "Wow, Sasuke, your mom's a mind reader, eh?" Naruto grinned. Oh, he could make so many jokes down the line with this tidbit of info. Poor guy never caught a break. Sakura smiled, but inwardly, she was a bit envious of Mikoto and Sasuke's relationship. If only my mother were like Mikoto-san. Maybe then, she would notice the abuse, she reflected solemnly. She banished those thoughts from her head. Too many times today she had dwelled on the past, and it was time to move forward and look ahead toward a shining future. She had all the time in the world for her revenge on Tetsuya. Constantly thinking about it would distract her from training. "So what were you three planning on doing today?" she asked curiously, changing the subject completely. "Well, to be honest, we weren't sure," Naruto answered honestly, scratching his chin in thought. So, she began making hand signals to gather her thoughts. "You three were just planning on winging it?" "Yup. Pretty much. That about covers it." She sighed and palmed her face, while shaking her head. "You guys know you won't get very far without proper guidance, you know?" "Well, yeah, but we were just planning on perfecting the basics before moving on to other stuff," Sakura explained. "I don't know about these guys, but I plan on blazing through the academy like it's a child's play thing." "Oi. I'm with Sakura-chan on this one," Naruto agreed, nodding seriously. Sasuke smirked. "Blow away the competition, eh? That sounds fun. Count me in as well." Mikoto looked at the three in a new light. Blow away the competition? While the Konoha Shinobi Academy wasn't like ANBU training, it wasn't a cakewalk either, as there were some truly difficult hurdles to overcome. Well, for starting out. Shinobi in training, anyhow. To genin and above, it was pitifully easy. These three did seem determined maybe she could. She shook her head. Oh, why the hell not? It was perfect, and it killed many birds with one stone. But before that, she needed to know one final thing. Mikoto got a serious look on her face, one that didn't go unnoticed by the three soon-to-be child assassins. They all tensed up a bit, subconsciously. "You three tell me. How serious are you about this?" "Mikoto-san, all my life, I've wanted to be a shinobi so I could one day be acknowledged and accepted. I'm willing to risk my entire life, just for a shot at that," became the blonde-haired male's reply. His onyx and jade-eyed friends were starting to see their cerulean-orbed companion in a new outlook, as their respect for him shot up a notch. "I want to overcome all the obstacles that logic would dictate that I wouldn't get far, considering my background," Sakura began next. "I want to be a well-rounded splendid kunoichi. With Naruto-kun and Sasuke-kun here, I truly believe that it can happen." The Uzumaki and Uchiha smiled, genuinely touched. "Ka-sanyo already know the situation about my brother. Sure, I want to please my father, but really, I need to learn to please myself. Otherwise, I'll just end up disappointed. These two have given me some new perspectives. Now, I don't feel so alone. You and me both, Sasuke/Sasuke-kun," came the collective thoughts of Sakura and Naruto. Mikoto hummed. "I see," she said neutrally, although, inwardly, she was practically jumping for joy. "Well, in light of you three taking this seriously, it's decided, then, what's decided?" Sasuke asked, a bit confused. "Who's going to be your new sensei from now until you graduate?" Mikoto revealed, grinning. All three collectively went wide-eyed. "Why you?" Sasuke asked beyond belief, just to be sure his ears weren't deceiving him. His mother was going to teach them ninjutsu? He palmed his face. Why in the hell didn't he think of asking for her help before? She was a retired jounin and had plenty of time to spend helping him with jutsu, for fuck's sake. Sasuke's inward berating of his own stupidity and lack of foresight was cut short as his mother nodded. "Yes. Come on, it'll be fun. You get to hang out with your mom, as well as your two friends, and, at the same time, be 10 steps ahead of all the others in your class." Sakura beamed. "That's so awesome." "Cha," she said excitedly, while Naruto plainly smirked. "But," she declared in a warning tone, "I'm going to work you three hard. I won't accept anyone giving up. Is that clear?" "Hi, Mikoto-sensei," they shouted in unison. She smiled. "Mikoto-sensei, eh?" She liked the sound of that. Well, didn't that have a nice ring to it? Good. Alright, Sasuke-kun, show Sakura-chan to the training ground. I need to talk to Naruto-kun alone. I'll be there in 5 minutes. This won't take long. The raven-haired Uchiha looked at his mom, and shrugged before leading a slightly worried Sakura away from the house. Naruto was looking confused, too, wondering what the matriarch wanted to talk to him alone about. She waited a few moments to make sure they were out of earshot. Naruto-kundo, you know, she asked, choosing her words carefully, so she wouldn't break the Sandame's edict. Now, Naruto understood perfectly. If you're referring to the furball stuck in my gut, then yes, I do know. Imagine the shock when I found out that I'm a pariah for something I had no say in, he responded bitterly. Mikoto gave the boy a look of sympathy. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, she sincerely said. It's a shame a village that's supposedly as great as ours has such ignorance and intolerance. Well, I'm going to change that, by becoming a legendary ninja, or they'll have no choice but to respect me, Naruto declared. Mikoto smiled and ruffled his hair. Of that, Naruto-kun, I have no doubt you will. Now, then, go on and find the others. I'm going to my room for a change of wardrobe, okay? Okay. Naruto brightened up, preparing to leave. Oh, and Naruto-kun, Mikoto called out, stopping him in his tracks. He turned to look at her. Yes, Mikoto-sensei? You're not alone. Naruto smiled. I know not anymore. With that said, Naruto ran out the door, keen on finding his two good friends. Mikoto watched him head out the door with a serene smile adorned on her face. Uchiha Training Grounds, 1,530 hours, Sasuke and Sakura were currently touring the custom-built Uchiha Training Ground. It was around 10,000 square feet, with various training dummies, a small lake about 15 feet deep at its lowest point, and about 50 feet in diameter. It was nothing special, but one could practice water techniques and water walking if one wished to do so. With so much space, the 3 8-year-olds were free to practice as hard as they wanted without interfering with the other. The small forest in the area could help them build up their teamwork in various conditions. Wow, Sasuke-kun, your estate is amazing, she said in awe at the size and diversity among it. Ah, it's no big deal, the scion modestly countered. I just happened to be born lucky. He simply shrugged. You know, that's one of the things I love about you guys, Sakura said, sitting down lotus style, which Sasuke followed suit perpendicular to her. Pray tell, what's that? Sasuke inquired. Well, you and Naruto-kun are so modest and humble. Admittedly, I can get a big head and a bit hot-headed because of my intelligence over some of the girls I know. I see, Sasuke replied, thinking about it. Well, I've personally seen what happens when a guy who thinks he's hot stuff goes up against an opponent he thinks he'll crush and then gets his butt utterly handed to him. That behind got handed to said person, by none other than his older brother, Itachi, by express delivery. The rosette-haired girl couldn't help but laugh at Sasuke's amusing choice of words. That butt-kicking must have been a sight to behold, she noted. Sasuke nodded. It was. But, anyhow, yeah, I try to rise above the stigma of my clan's arrogance. I'd rather know my limits and live another day rather than being some moron who feels he's entitled to something because of his clan. I have no doubt some in my clan feel that way. Sakura stared at him a bit, in awe. Wow, Sasuke-kun, you really do want to rise above them. He shrugged, hey, when you live in your brother's shadow, you got to stand out somehow, and I figured, why not there? Sakura nodded in understanding. So what do you think your mom wanted Naruto-kun for? Beats me, I can't think of a real reason my, Sasuke. Sakura-chan. Well, speak of the devil, Sasuke said, shaking his head standing up. Naruto, he called out waving his hand, hoping the blonde boy could see him. Over here. Naruto ran over to the pair. Damn, took me forever to find you guys. They looked at him. How long were you looking? Sakura asked. Maybe 30 seconds or so. Naruto laughed. Both pairs of eyes started to twitch. You're calling 30 seconds forever? Are you screwing with me right now? Sasuke rhetorically asked. Nope, Naruto snickered, for the sole purpose of getting a rise out of the Uchiha. It worked flawlessly. You idiot, he yelled comically, before Sakura sighed. Oh, boys, she pleasantly chimed, before they turned to her and she gave them what they now refer to as the look. Need I remind you two that I have perfectly capable hands that can keep you two in line? Now, do I need to step in, or are you going to stop this banter before I tear your fucking ears off? With such a force and emphasis that for the second time today, Sakura had nearly caused both males to piss their pants. Never, since the three met, did they hear Sakura ever drop the F-bomb, and to hear it come out of her mouth was shocking enough, even in spite of the threat. No, they both shouted at the same time, to which Sakura smirked. Oh, was it good having control over some males, rather than the other way around? Damn it. There she went, thinking about him again. Ugh, she was glad this training was distracting her for the most part. Ah, so you've three already picked a spot. Very good, came the voice of Mikoto as she walked forward with what appeared to be a jounin outfit very similar to what most wore. It wasn't customized at all, except only to compensate for her medium-sized breasts. At the sight of the retired jounin, all three immediately got serious and stood at attention. This action caused Mikoto to blink before she chuckled. Okay, guys, you have to relax, because I'm going to teach you the basic of the basics. So what are we learning first, Ka-san? Sasuke questioned. Mikoto smiled. All three of you, sit down. A wave of confusion swept through them, but they nonetheless complied and did as they were instructed. The older woman joined them on the soft grass as a small, but gentle breeze swept through the training ground. Meditation? Naruto asked, dreading it. Yes, but with a bit of a twist, Mikoto remarked, closing her eyes. What do you mean, sensei? Sakura inquired with unabashed interest. You all know the basics of chakra, I presume? She heard three heads nod, before continuing. I want you to try and feel for the area around you, by spreading your chakra around you. While you three were chatting, I placed a dozen or so stones filled specifically with my chakra around the training ground for you to feel. I want you to try and locate them by just feeling your chakra around the entire field and then mouth off their specific locations to me. Obviously you'll have your eyes closed during all this. We'll work on precision, speed, and accuracy, at a later date, but for now just try to find it by spreading your chakra like a bedspread. Are you implying that, eventually, we'll be able to thin our chakra signatures that travel and search for these stones like a snake slithering in the grass searching for prey, then say a spider making a giant web of chakra to search for it, came the voice of Naruto. Excellent analogies, Naruto-kun, and you are indeed correct. There's also another benefit to you all doing this. Inevitably, your signatures will overlap with each other, constantly, until you become precise enough. Sakura caught on immediately to what she was implying. So in a sense, we'll know by second nature of whether or not a person is friend or foe. We'll be so used to each other's chakra that we'll know who's who in an instant. You hit the nail on the head, Sakura-chan. Mikoto praised, which caused the girl's self-confidence to rise. The Uchiha matriarch had to admit it. These kids were extremely impressive, with their insight and intelligence. I wonder just how far their potential goes. Well, in any case, I'm going to see it through, so, Ka-san, what's this technique called? Her son asked. I'm glad you asked, Sasuke-kun, Mikoto said grinning. It's called the Chakra Hankyuri no Jutsu, Chakra Echolation Technique. It can be used more for the exercise I'm having you do. Like, for instance, finding the location of things you can't see, scouting for traps and ploys, makibishi, among many things. I'll leave it to you guys to learn it and use it to its full potential. All three nodded. Sensei, what are the hand seals for it? Sakura questioned. Mikoto shook her head. While there are seals for this jutsu, it can be done without them. Eventually, you're going to have to mold your chakra without the use of seals, like say using it to get out of a tight spot, if you have a crippled use of your arms. You get what I'm saying? Sasuke and Sakura frowned, but Naruto was busy contemplating Mikoto's reasoning while they voiced their opinions. But, Ka-san, aren't we supposed to start off molding our chakra with hand seals? You did say you were giving us the basics. That's when the light bulb went off in Naruto's head. Ah. Don't you guys get it? It makes complete sense now, he declared. Mikoto raised an eyebrow. Did he get it that quickly? How, Naruto-kun? Enlighten us. Gladly. Think about it. If you're so used to molding chakra with seals, once we eventually start learning years down the road sealless chakra manipulation, can you imagine how difficult that would be? You get used to using seals, which made everything infinitely easier since the seals essentially did the molding for you in a sense. Now, if we were to start off molding chakra on our own and we get pretty good at it, learning to control our chakra with hand seals would seem like child's play compared to the hurdle of this technique, Naruto explained in a scholarly fashion. Mikoto smiled, as Naruto's logic sunk into both the Uchiha Saiyan and the Haruno. Wow, Naruto-kun, you really are something, aren't you? Ah, he sheepishly grinned, I only figured it out because of what Sasuke said before. It's no big. Mikoto nodded. Okay, you three, close your eyes and I want you to feel for your chakra core and manipulate it outwardly. Then, I want you to mouth the location of a stone to me once you locate one. Trust me, I can read lips very well. Sasuke snorted a bit. She's definitely not lying there. All three 8-year-olds shut their eyes as they both felt inner peace with themselves. Mikoto was specifically paying attention to the blonde most. I wonder if the fox will make it difficult for him to control his chakra. But, then again, considering who his parents are, he'd have a difficult time controlling it with or without him. He's definitely got the hardest road ahead of him, only time would tell if she was right or not, but for now, she would watch and guide them in any way she could. Just like a sensei and a mother should. Kumogakure, 2nd District Akechi Clan Estate, 2 weeks later, 1,200 hours, Hideyoshi was not in the most pleasant of moods as he took a stroll toward an outside balcony that overlooked a mountain pass. Even the ultranationalist leader had to admit the natural beauty of his homeland as he watched several massive eagles flow through the skies without a care in the world. A female landed on her nest, bringing fresh sustenance for her young. This brought a small smile to the Akechi clan head. Cold-hearted he was, admittedly, but that was only towards humans. He had a true appreciation for animal life, especially those of the raptor taxonomy class. He chuckled to himself, okay, that may be because my clan has several raptor summoning contracts, but hey, he mused to himself, rarely able to do so certain times of the day. He truly loved these magnificent creatures. Able to soar through the skies at hundreds of kilometers an hour and spot prey with their marvelous eyesight. The eagles around Lightning Country grew to tremendous sizes not seen, literally, anywhere else in the world. The contracts that his clan owned had them even larger. Suddenly, a male falcon, about a story high, landed on the railing, looking at the ultranationalist curiously. He got a smirk on his face. Oh, you want something, boy? He purred as looked at the bird of prey. He'd been in contact with them for so long that he could instantly tell a gender by just glancing at them. The raptor seemed to understand him as it bobbed his head. Hideyoshi smiled at the falcon before reaching into a bag that was on the floor that held dead, but sanitized for easy human handling, animals that were commonly the prey of all the birds in the valley. Hideyoshi rarely got to feed one of them when they happened to stop by, so he always kept a bag on hand outside and forbade anyone from touching or moving it without his permission. You want the fish, don't you? He asked a bit playfully. The falcon's mouth was practically drooling at the catfish in the clan head's hand. He moved away, the falcon following him by walking across the railing. After a few moments of teasing the poor bird, Hideyoshi finally gave him what he wanted. The bird gulped down the catfish like it was simply a midday snack. It cried out in approval, and brought its head down toward Hideyoshi and rubbed it against him. Hideyoshi happily returned the favor, gently rubbing the creature's feathered neck. He felt a bit at peace. No more worrying about that bastard he called a Hokage. No more worrying about their plans. Hell, not even making sure that Hideyoshi-sama, a seemingly panicked voice came from nowhere, which scared the bird he was currently petting. Its docile nature instantly became one of being frightened and it flew off, nearly scratching the Akechi clan head in the face. Hideyoshi growled as he turned angrily to the voice, which belonged to a subordinate of his, Akira. The petite female had a small frame, and had the outfit of a Kyumo jounin, with a chikudo strapped toward her back. She wore no cloud headband, a common symbol of loyalty toward the ultranationalists. The snowy-haired jounin bowed before him. You had better have a damn good reason for interrupting that moment, because I know of some hawks in this valley who would love to have a taste of flesh as delicate as yours, he coldly sneered. A bit of sweat rolled down Akira's brow as she was used to him making threats, but that didn't mean they were any less serious. 1,000 apologies, my lord, but it appears we've found something that needs to be of your attention. His eyes narrowed, and what is that? We've come across an unknown backer. We have enough money to make the down payment for. Red clouds, Akira said, choosing her words carefully. Hideyoshi had a strict rule of not discussing the coup or anything related. He didn't even trust everyone in his own clan or the fact that the place could be bugged somehow. The clan head was always paranoid, but then again, how could he afford not to be as such, considering his plans? I see, he responded as neutral as possible. An unknown backer? How could they have known about the deal? Not hat was impossible. They did publicly request money for donations, like any political party could. It was necessary, and most of all, it was legal. Either way, they needed to find out who and most of all why. While it pleases me that we are able to make the payment, I'd rather not have unknown allies that can strike me cold in the middle of the night, Akira. Find out what you can, and report back to me, he ordered, seeing her bow her head. A small smirk adorned his face. Ohan tells Sayuri to order her division to refocus efforts elsewhere. Sayuri Ichiso, the lieutenant commander of the Bolt Reconnaissance Division. Truly a powerful kunoichi she was, and the village's foremost expert on reconnaissance. All information she found, she reported directly to either her commander or the Hokage. It's too bad for you, but she works for us, and not you and your disgusting ideals. Truly ironic how you consider some of your closest friends are likely your worst enemies. It shall be done, Akira acknowledged, before vanishing in a swirl of wind. Hideyoshi smiled evilly. He knew that Akira would get the job done, quickly, effectively, and efficiently. After all, she was his daughter. Hokage Tower, 1st District, around same time, I sat in his office, a bit more tranquil than usual. His talk with Darui over 2 weeks ago had really calmed his nerves down, and he wasn't in as bad a mood as he used to be. However, the ultranationalists had been relatively quiet a bit over the past few weeks. Hideyoshi rarely made any public appearances, nor were there any campaign rallies. In the next 6 months, Districts 4, 5, 8 and 11 were up for election, and he had been preparing the incumbents from the United Cloud, A's political party, so they wouldn't lose their seats to the ultranationalists. Hell, the third political party, the conservative Verga, was better than those bastards. It spoke volumes of how bad the situation was in the place he had known as home for decades. This was one of the reasons why he had made a call for the Bolt commander, himself, Isu Hayasaka. The Black Operations and Lightning Tactics Division was a truly fearsome organization, one created under the name Hokage during the Second Great Shinobi World War. It had a simple command structure. At the top was an overall commander, a position currently in the hands of Aisu. Then, after that, they were separated into 4 divisions: assault, interrogation, reconnaissance, and assassination. Each division was held by an LC, or lieutenant commander, who reported directly to Aisu. Each division was further separated into squads of 4. Each squad was headed by a captain, and under the captains the regular bolt forces were simply called grunts. To symbolize membership and rank, members wore custom-made haori that were worn over their uniforms, each one of a different color. The commander's haori was jet black, the LCs were white, the captains were a dark red, and the grunts, navy blue. Any member of the organization, grunt or otherwise, was considered extremely dangerous, with the assault team being considered hyperlethal in their files. All of their dossiers were completely classified, due to their missions being off the record. The lieutenant commanders and the commander were also a sort of deterrence, along with their jinchuriki. Hell, if A was honest with himself, he could likely see Aisu replacing him as Hokage, someday. He snorted a bit. Yeah, if we make it that far, he intoned a bit sadly. He then heard a knock on his door. Speak of the damn devil. Come in, Aisu, A permitted. The door opened and the Hokage took in the presence of his closest friends and allies. Aisu was truly a striking man. He was well-toned, and stood at a height of about 6 feet, 4 inches. Aqua blue irises and chocolate-colored, neatly swept brown hair with a single strand hanging from his forehead. He wore an ebony-hilted nodachi on his left waist, black and red shinobi pants, and a white, long-sleeved shirt that extended out from his haori, which, on the back, had the kanji 4 bolt with a lightning strike in the center. Truly, if Aisu made more public appearances, he'd be an instant heartthrob for the ladies. You wanted to see me, Hokage-sama? He asked, rhetorically keeping a smile on his face as he sat down. Drop the formalities, Aisu, you know how I hate when you do that. Sometimes, his insistence on being polite annoyed the lightning shadow to no end. Aisu blinked. Hokage-sama. Surely, you can't mean that, he protested. He absolutely refused to call the leader of his village by anything less than his title. Please, Aisu, that's an order, came A's stern reply. Aisu sighed, but nodded, nonetheless. If you say so. He hesitated. Damn, that felt uncomfortable. He shifted around in his seat a bit. A shook his head in amusement. Anyhow, how goes the organization? He inquired, deciding with an appetizer conversation, before diving into the full-course meal. It's going well, Rai. A glared at him. He corrected a bit sheepishly before continuing. Nothing new to report on the intelligence front, but everything seems relatively normal for all 5 of the villages. The hefty lightning shadow outwardly hummed. I see. He glanced at the nodachi on Aisu's waist. It was the legendary Reiansu, Thundercloud Talon, the blade of the one gained after signing the contract with the Thunderbirds. No one had wielded the blade in decades, a testament to the will of Aisu. Only one pure of heart could sign the contract with the mythical masters of his village's natural element. But, I know that's not why you called me. He raised it, he deduced, a trace of desolation in the young commander's voice as he frowned a bit. Aside. Yes, it isn't. It's about the ultranationalists. Suddenly, the solemn and saddened expression on the bolt commander's face was instantly replaced by eyes dangerously narrowing. What about them? He asked in a frigid tone, which chilled A to the bone. As much as it pains me to say this, Aisu, we need to defeat them with political muscle and not brute force, A stated plainly. But why? We know they're basically saying, we want to take over the village and fuck you if you don't like it. The commander cursed, which, considering the subject matter, didn't surprise A in the least. Although he was registered as an independent voter for his district, he still backed the United Cloud, although a bit discreetly. Aisu hated the ultranationalists with a passion rivaling the blazes of 1,000 suns. The Yondaime Reikage had never really asked him what the underlying reason for his abhorrence was, but alas, at this point, it didn't even matter, so he never bothered asking. I know that, Aisu, the dark-skinned male calmly allayed, but we have to do this with as little bloodshed as possible. I'm not going to risk a civil war for your zeal for blood, he warned. Aisu looked down, a bit ashamed. You understand, sir? I apologize for my behavior. I nodded, accepting it. I know you mean well, Aisu. Normally, you seem so peaceful, tranquil, and, dare I say it, a pacifist. I am, to some extent, but when it comes to them I make an exception, he growled, though a bit contained, as he had regained some of his composure. Hideyoshi and his cronies truly bring out the worst in humanity, don't they? The older ninja asked. Yes, however we may not be so different, Aisu admitted, his cerulean eyes shifting off to the side. Now, the Yondaime was truly confused. Aisu saying that he shared any similarities towards his enemies was a cause for alarm. Clarify what you mean, he commanded. Men were slaves bound by the shackles of our morals and kept docile by the whips of our faith, Aisu replied to a stunned A. He sounded like a true, wizened sage. The ultranationalists and even Iwiri all bound by what we consider to hold us back. How far will we go till we shatter the chains and then become the whip that controls the faith of our underlings? Aisu, he quickly shook his head. Don't mind me, I'm just rambling. He dropped his near sage-like aura in favor his normal upbeat attitude, well as upbeat as he could get while discussing the ultranationalists, anyhow. I nodded, but made a mental note to ask him about it later. As I was saying, we'll need to defeat them with political muscle, instead. There's an election coming up, one we cannot afford to lose. That will put the number of seats at about equal, depending on how many districts they win. Sir, what if they gain all 4? Aisu inquired, wanting to hear his Kage's worst-case scenario contingency. Then may the gods help us all. So, knowing that fact, we need to sway public opinion back toward our favor. You know this won't be easy, right? I grunted, a bit annoyed at the brusque way he had of putting things. I know, you don't have to state the obvious, Aisu, he said gruffly. Aisu winced, but said nothing. I looked at the clock, and sighed. I have a meeting with the council in about 5 minutes or so. You're dismissed for now. The Bolt commander nodded and stood up. If I may ask one thing, sir, how do you expect me to sway public opinion? The Reikage thought for a moment. Well, you could always ask Darui. He may not look like it, but he knows a thing or two about politics. Aisu's eyes widened in realization, as he face-palmed. Gah! Thank you, Reikage-sama, he blurted out, which startled the Kage. Seeing this, Aisu quickly explained, I promised his sister I'd visit her today. You know about her condition, right? There was silence before A replied. Yes, I do. Aisu looked down sadly. If only we could find a cure, he frowned, eyes down. A swallowed hard. Indeed. Well, Reikage-sama, take care. We'll beat those bastards, eventually. Aisu smiled, holding out a closed fist. I chuckled, amused. He really did show his playful side only to him, in contradiction to how stoic he was when it came to his duties. The swift-footed wrestler gave him a grin back and returned the fist bump, like he did his little brother, B. Count on it, the Reikage acknowledged. The brunette gave a short bow, and then phased out of sight in an impressive burst of speed. The Reikage shook his head as he stood up and decided to head to the council halls early, a smirk on his face. Truly, the commander had put him in a good enough mood to where he could deal with these bureaucrats on second thought. He looked at the bottom drawer and pulled it open and took out a bottle. Screw-dog sake is a man's true best friend, he declared before taking a drink. Yep, best friends, indeed. 4th District, Darui's residence, 1,600 hours, Darui was currently sitting down in front of a bed where his sister lay half asleep, but for all practical purposes, didn't have a clue what was going on in the outside world. Ayasaki. Darui spoke softly, clenching his fists. His younger sister was barely in her teens, yet she had already come down with a disease that had baffled the medic corps. She was on her last legs, and maybe had another year or two at the very most to live. He intently listened to the soft sound of her breathing in and out, as she slept peacefully. Even with her disease, the dark-skinned female always had a smile on her face. Damn it, the Jounin half yelled. It wasn't fair. Why should someone as sweet as her fall victim to the horrors of disease, while truly vile men live healthy lives? That sheer fact caused a bitter tear to roll down his cheek as he covered his face. He was a shinobi, he had killed, and he had been nearly killed, but even then, he was still human. Ni-san, he heard a voice, which caused his eyes to go wide. Ayasaki had awakened during his inner turmoil and sat up straighter. Even in a hospital gown, his sister was still beautiful as her chocolate-brown eyes stared back at him. "Are you okay?" Her voice was lined with concern. He quickly wiped his tears away and laughed a bit. "Oh, come on, sis, you know me. Big bros got to be strong, right?" Ayasaki frowned. "Ni-san, don't lie to me," she reached out and touched his shaking hand. "Just tell me what's bothering you." She looked at him attentively in the eye. Darui sighed in defeat, then smiled. His sister was a master at getting him to talk when he didn't want to. "Stop being such a stoic bastard," she'd say to him playfully. He smiled, though more so at the memory rather than his sister in front of him. "Sis, you know with your illness you might." Darui was starting to choke up, before his sister squeezed his hand. "Ni-san, I'm not afraid," she told him sternly. "But, no. I don't want my Ni-san being scared for me. I can't have you being worried about me at random times. What if it happens during a mission? You'll be distracted and you'll never be able to protect our home with a clear head." Darui couldn't help but smile through his teary eyes. That was Ayasaki for you. Always putting others before herself. It humbled the heir to the Black Lightning, yet also enraged him at the same time. How could the world be so fucking cruel to one whom seemingly did nothing to deserve it? "I know it's just," a knock on the front door interrupted him. A bit thankful, he excused himself to go answer it. Darui took a look around at his small condo. He had to admit, he had it pretty made, being one of the village's elite jounin. His 3-bedroom complex had all the necessary accommodations he needed, and he'd finally purchased it after saving enough ryu from all the missions he had gone on. It was strange to get a knock on the door, however. Very few people even knew, or even cared, where he lived. With a shrug, he kept his guard up, as he turned the knob to see a visitor who was near the bottom of the people he had expected to see. Standing in his doorway, was the Bolt Commander himself. Darui blinked. "Isu Sadesho, Supreme Commander," he exclaimed in sheer surprise and shock. Isu rubbed the back of his head a bit sheepishly. "Sorry I'm late, Darui. I was lost among the clouds," he explained to a confused, ashen-haired jounin. "A late? I never knew you were coming," he bluntly stated, owlishly blinking. Isu blinked. "Wait, your sister didn't tell you?" Darui rose an eyebrow. Tell me what?" Isu groaned a bit, shaking his head. "Oh, Ayasaki-chan, you did that on purpose, didn't you?" he mused aloud, with Darui only raising an eyebrow. "Look, can I come in?" he asked politely. Darui shrugged and stepped aside, allowing the Bolt leader to step through. Isu whistled in awe. "Wow, you've really bought a lot of new stuff since the last time I was here." There was definitely some furniture here that he didn't recognize. Darui shut the door and agreed. "Yeah, I guess I kind of went into a shopping spree to make sure my sister was comfortable after Wellia no," the solemn tone told all. "I know," Isu frowned. "Anyhow, where is she?" Darui pointed to a back room. Aisu nodded his thanks and made his way toward the direction he pointed out. He had to duck a bit, due to his height, but he crept a bit through the door. "Ayasaki-chan," he whispered, in case she was asleep. Ayasaki recognized his voice immediately. "Aisu-kun," she cried out in joy as she willed herself out of bed to give the elite shinobi a hug. He laughed a bit and gave her a hug back, picking the teenager up and holding her. "Told you I wouldn't break my promise," he whispered in her ear. Due to his duties as leader of the village's Black Operations Squad, he rarely got a free moment to see her. He had promised her over 3 months ago that he'd visit as much as he could. Ayasaki cried tears of joy as she buried her face in his chest as well as wrapping her arms around his neck. "I knew you would. I never lost faith in you," she told him as he held close the girl who was like a sister to him. "Now," he began on light-hearted note, "you didn't tell him I was coming on purpose, didn't you?" Ayasaki smirked knowingly. "Oh, Aisu-kun, I have no idea what you're talking about," she chimed, feigning ignorance. Tisk, he clucked his teeth, not buying it. Her only response was to giggle. "You know I love giving surprises to my nii-san. Is that so?" Darui asked in a deadpan, coming into the room and shaking his head. "You know I hate surprises," he lamely added, shifting his hands in his pockets as his facial expression became lazy again. "Only when it's from me," she argued, sticking her tongue out. "A fair point," he conceded. "Heh, still haven't beaten your sister in a game of logic, yet, Darui?" Aisu smirked, remembering all the times she had stumped the poor jounin. Poor guy couldn't catch a break. Yeah, he grumbled. "Now could you please let my sister down? I don't like her being held like that for too long." Aisu frowned, but nonetheless complied with Darui's request. True, he did outrank him threefold, but he wasn't about to be an asshole to just say no to a brother's request when it came to his terminally ill sister. He gently lay her down, and kissed her forehead, causing the dark-skinned girl to blush profusely. "You rest now, okay? I have to talk to your brother." She simply nodded and rested her head back on the pillow and closed her eyes. She had a big grin on her face, of which Darui had no doubt the reason. The bolt leader turned to the jounin, light-heartedness foregone. "Come. We should talk in the living room." Darui complied, following Aisu out, sparing one glance back at his smiling sibling. He relaxed a bit, and gently closed the door. "So, what is it?" Darui questioned, getting straight to the point. "To be frank, Darui, I need your help in defeating the ultranationalists. Reikage-sama says you know a thing or two about political muscle, in which I have little experience," Aisu pleaded without preamble. Darui looked away. "So Daishu know how I feel about politics," he admitted. Darui officially was just registered as an independent voter, and despite how much he respected Killer A, he completely refused to register as a United Cloud member. He felt that if he officially took a side, that he'd be obligated to vote them in all the time. Aisu sighed. "Yes, I know, but think of the village. You know what will happen if they gain any more seats on the council." "I know that." Darui yelled in anger. "You don't think I'm scared? What those bastards might do? Install fascism, false national pride, hatred, bigotry, even social Darwinism." He shuddered at that last thought. "They might even kill he couldn't bring himself to say it." "Darui, I know," Aisu said calmly. "But if you want to save your sister from living in a hell they'll install, I'll need your help." "What good is that if I betray my own principles?" he shouted angrily. "What good are those principles if your sister ends up dead because you refuse to act?" Aisu countered, turning away from him. That statement sent shockwaves through the jounin. Various scenarios started to play out in his head as he saw Hideyoshi overlooking a burning Kumogakure, where his sister was ordered to be executed because she was dead weight and of no use to the new regime. He clenched his fists. "I see," Darui said as the realization dawned on him. He made a promise that he would protect his sister at all costs. If that meant he had to step into the ugly game of politics, then so be it. "I'll help," he softly declared. Aisu nodded in gratitude. "Thank you, Darui. I'm sure your old sensei would be proud to preserve the village that stood tall in the clouds." The Sandame Raikage, in addition to teaching him his black lightning techniques, also taught the boy everything he knew now about the political underground tactics that were employed throughout the village. Aisu had his own views, sure, but he was a military tactician and strategist first and foremost, which is why they needed each other. Darui knew the information, and Aisu could conjure up a strategy to counter it. "I'm sure he would be," he neutrally said, not liking to speak of his old sensei as the wound from his loss was still fresh to the air. "All right, meet me at the base sometime this week, whenever you're free. I still have things to take care of, on my end," Aisu ordered. Darui nodded. "I will." Aisu had turned to leave before Darui's voice stopped him again. Sadesho, he turned his head. "What is it?" "I'm sorry about my short burst of anger, I meant no disrespect," he uttered apologetically. Aisu waved him off and smiled. "Don't worry about it. You had a perfectly valid reason for doing so. Just learn to control it, all right?" Darui nodded. "I will take care, Sadesho." Aisu said his goodbyes and quietly left out of the front door. The Jounin went back to his sister's room to see her sound asleep. "Ayasaki. No matter what happens, I'll always be there for you, even if it means turning against my own codes." Perhaps, if Darui was a bit more attentive, he would have noticed the slightest twitch of a smile on his sibling's face. Akechi clan household, 2,100 hours, Akira ran through the clan estate like a bat out of hell, racing towards her father's study. This was big, and he needed to know right away. To hell if he was meeting with the clan elders. He'd probably kill her for not informing him of such a huge development. She turned the corner, nearly slipping in her slightly panicked state. She could hear the voices of the elders and her father as they were discussing things she couldn't have cared less about at the moment. Without even bothering to knock, she slid the door open, a bit out of breath. All 7 of the elders, plus Hideyoshi, turned to glare at her for the interruption. "Akira!" Hideyoshi growled. "What is the meaning of this?" She quickly bowed as low as she could. "1,000 apologies, Hideyoshi-sama, but I bring important news." Hideyoshi raised an eyebrow, but that didn't mean he was less intimidating to his daughter. "Have you found our generous donors' identities?" She shook her head. "No. Better than that. Our members have caught 2 Konoha Black Ops Shinobi. They appeared to have been trying to sabotage our plans." That statement caused all hell to break loose. Uchiha Estate, 3 months later, 1,300 hours, Mikoto sat in an elevated position on the top of one of the highest tree branches, in the small forest inside the Uchiha training grounds. She was using a highly advanced cloaking technique that her husband had taught her. Fugaku had copied the jutsu with his Sharingan a decade ago during the Third Great Shinobi World War with Iwagakure. "Maisegakure no Jutsu, chameleon technique," she whispered as the light started to abnormally refract around her, hiding both her shadow and scent. "I wonder how long they'll last against my clone." Only one way to find out," she mused, as she continued to observe. Meanwhile, Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke stood in manji formation, each with their backs toward one another. Physically, there wasn't too much of a difference, except for 8-year-olds, they didn't look as frail as they did 3 months ago. Naruto had gained an inch in height, putting him on equal footing with his raven-haired best friend. Mikoto had to beat a proper diet in him literally. As for Sakura, although she still was for intents and purposes, girly, she had ditched her hair bow, and had a tomboyish mix with her personality. The Uchiha and the Haruno were panting heavily, with the only thing keeping Sakura from fainting from exhaustion was sheer willpower to prove her worth. Naruto, however, despite Mikoto's brutal training, still acted like he had energy to spare. Damn, Naruto, Sasuke thought, inhaling in and out at as much of an even pace as he could. Just where the hell do you get all this energy from? Sasuke thought. When his mother said she'd put them through hell, she wasn't kidding. All three tensed up, hearing a distortion in the bushes, nearby. Sakura, on impulse, threw a shuriken, dead on at the direction the sound came from. The three waited, not a single sound. Sweat rolled down Naruto's brow as he focused his eyesight. A small river of blood started to run across the soil. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Seems you killed a wild animal, Naruto whispered. Sakura grimaced, but said nothing. She was still trying to get used to the idea that she'd have to kill a human being in cold blood someday. Killing animals, even by accident, didn't sit well with her. The rosette-haired civilian sighed. She'd just have to cross that bridge when she came to it. Okay, Mikoto-sensei is just toying with you obviously, Sakura huffed while speaking up. Sasuke nodded. I wouldn't doubt it. Sakura, you have enough chakra to do another chakra Hankyurai? He inquired, hopeful. Out of the trinity of friends, Sakura, hands down, had the best chakra control. She had completed the exercise of finding the stones Mikoto had hidden across the training grounds. Sasuke had completed it, with some difficulty, about 4 hours later. As for Naruto, Mikoto sat attentive as she watched her pupils to try and perfect the technique that she had taught them. So far, they were doing pretty well. Naruto-kun, considering how much chakra you have, the amount of control you have is astonishing. The Uchiha matriarch thought in amazement. By all means, his chakra control should be utterly abysmal, and it should have taken him a week to find even one stone. He was just one surprise after the other. The Kyuubi, watching from the outside, easily saw through her stoic face, and snorted. She really couldn't figure it out? It's simple, Uchiha, he began in monologue to himself. Your state of mind and brain activity also affects how well you can control chakra at any given time or overall. To him, it was the easiest thing in the world to figure out. With the suppression seal off, Naruto's mind was clear and calm, and despite keeping some of his old personality quirks, most of his goofy side was gone. Had it still been on, it would have been even harder for the blonde to control his chakra. Add to the fact that he actually had a brain in that thick skull of his, the boy grasped concepts much easier and in turn applied them to real life. I wonder if it'd be a stretch to say he'd learn at the rate of a prodigy, the Vulpine mused a bit before waving a paw. No matter. It's too early to tell, either way. Naruto, however, was busy concentrating on trying to thin his large net of chakra as it spread across the training ground. I've got to concentrate, the blonde told himself repeatedly. His chakra web had been so large that it dwarfed his friends by so much that it had nearly cancelled them out. They had the hurdle of not only finding the stones, but also dealing with Naruto's overlapping chakra. Naruto grunted a bit in frustration. Damn, was finding these stones one at a time, proving to be a pain in the ass. Naruto then froze. Wait a minute, his eyes widened in realization. Could it really have been that simple? Only one way to find out, he grinned inwardly and outwardly. Mikoto raised an eyebrow. What's he grinning about? Her eyes immediately shot up in surprise and shock. Naruto released more chakra, instead of less. This alarmed her, and due to the echolation, Sasuke and Sakura felt it too, and stopped their use of the Hankyurai. They both stared at the blonde in disbelief. Said blonde had no idea that all eyes were on him, as he concentrated on spreading his signature across the entire meadow. The grass nearby was starting to blow, as it were being jolted by the wind. The three had to cover their eyes or debris would have surely caught in between them. Naruto-kun, just where are you getting this amount of chakra from? Sakura thought, covering her eyes. It was over as fast as it had begun, as the grass started to settle and Mikoto felt his chakra suppressing itself as well as thinning. She was about to voice her concern, until Naruto opened his eyes and smirked at her. 1. Underpass, 2. By the shack, 3 in the garden near the roses, 4 also in the garden by the violets, 5 near the back door of the kitchen, 6 by the window, 7 near the lake, 8 in the water itself, and finally 9 behind you," he counted off, giving her a slight smug look. "Did I miss anything?" Mikoto sat there, jaw agape, in stunned silence. How?" she stuttered out. Naruto grinned. "Mikoto-sensei, I was going about it the wrong way. See, all this time I was trying to spread my signature and then try to thin it, and then I'd search for the stones. But the Hankyuurai doesn't work like that. Well, at least for me." All three listened intently at Naruto's explanation. The chakra Hankyuurai is an echolation, not a "find me" sort of thing. I simply spread my chakra around the field so much that all of the stones' locations started echoing back to me. Seeing as I already had the location of the stones, I lessened the amount of chakra I was outputting, which thinned my signature automatically. However, this method likely only works on objects with chakra, and living things that have chakra in them. I need an echo for this to work, so in the future to find inanimate objects, I'll likely have to master this jutsu even more. "Wow," Sasuke said simply. His mother and Sakura nodded dumbly, definitely sharing the Uchiha Saiyan sentiment. "Naruto-kun is so amazing." Sakura smiled in admiration. "Wow, Naruto-kun, even I haven't thought of using the jutsu like that," she admitted, although in her mind she was a little ashamed of herself. "Great, an 8-year-old improvising on a jutsu to overcome his handicap, and I'm 35 years old and have known the jutsu for half of my life. The gods must hate me. But, really, though, how the heck do you have so much chakra?" Sasuke had asked the question Naruto had been dreading. His eyes shifted to Mikoto, and he could tell gears were rapidly spinning in her head, too. Then, without thinking, "It might be a family trait that I inherited, who knows?" Naruto mentally slapped himself. A family trait? Seriously? They wouldn't buy that in a million years. "Ah, then that would make sense, then," Sakura agreed, contemplating in deep thought. "No normal guy your age can disperse that much chakra, I think." She was purely speculating at this point. "Yeah, you're probably right. It has to be some sort of bloodline," came the raven-haired male's agreement. Inwardly, Mikoto and Naruto sighed in relief, thankful that the two had bought it. Damn, close call. That excuse will do for now at least. Mikoto looked at the three of them. "The bloodline excuse, Naruto? Heh, the irony, you don't know how close you are to the truth, albeit a bit wrong on the terminology," the matriarch thought as the image of the Yondaime Hokage came to her head. They continued meditating for the rest of that day. Sakura hummed to herself. "I'm not sure, my reserves are pretty low right now. Even with my control, I don't think I can manage one." "Sorry," she said apologetically. Sasuke grunted, clearly a bit annoyed. "Damn. Okay Naruto, please tell me you have an idea, because I'm fresh out at the moment." I'm thinking. Naruto half-shouted back towards his best friend in irritation. They had been at this for nearly 2 hours. He was hungry, a bit pissed off, and his friends were slowing down. He placed his right index finger on the ground, and whispered, "Chakra Hankyuurai." Not even within a second of doing so, his eyes widened. "Clear." He shouted, and the three of them jumped into the branches as several kunai with explosive tags took their place. It was a small yield, and it wouldn't have killed them, but the explosion was still loud enough for their ears to ring. Sakura looked at the other two, and made a few hand signals pointing to the smoke. Sasuke squinted his eyes, and he saw a silhouette. A human one. He glanced over and Naruto nodded, smirking, an expression which he returned. They nodded, understanding each other completely, as the trio jumped from their respective branches. 3 kunai soared through the air, aiming to hit their targets. 3 clangs were heard as the 3 landed on the ground in crouch positions, panting. They were proud of themselves. They heard the sound of steel touching steel a while ago. It was a good indicator that their accuracy was dead on, forcing her to block instead of dodging like she usually did. Mikoto's clone walked out, casually, clapping her hands. The three visibly relaxed, while Naruto's mouth twitched. Ah! Good job, you three. You lasted a lot longer than I expected, she admitted, while praising the trio of 8-year-olds, who smiled with pride. Unfortunately, she began with a frown, you still weren't able to get me. All three of them smirked. Oh, Mikoto-sensei, didn't you always say not to let our guard down? Sakura chimed, as Naruto and Sasuke made a hand seal and they jumped away. Mikoto looked confused before looking down. 3 kunai were embedded in the ground, which she recognized as the kunai she had blocked earlier. Her eyes widened once she saw what was attached to them: explosive tags. The clone tried to jump out of the way, but it was too late as the resulting explosion engulfed the Kage Bunshin and it disappeared in a puff of smoke. All right! Naruto exclaimed, pumping his fist in the air. We got her! Nice job, team, he said as all three high-fived each other. Heh, that was a ballsy move, Sakura, and I didn't think it would work, Sasuke praised, much to the rosette-haired girl's embarrassment. Hey! I was getting desperate. That was poorly put together at the last minute, she modestly defended. She had sent them signals not only to attack together, but to attach explosive tags to the handles of the kunai they had thrown. Sasuke shrugged, still on cloud 9 from their triumphant victory. Naruto was simply grinning ear to ear. We make an awesome team, you know that? Indeed we do, Naruto-kun. Sakura was cut off as she felt a bit dizzy, and would have fallen flat on her face to the ground had Naruto not caught her. Whoa! Sakura-chan, you okay? He asked worriedly. Why, I am fine, she stammered out, inhaling deeply. She must be exhausted, Sasuke deduced, to which Naruto agreed. He positioned himself so that the shorter girl was on his back. Naruto-kun, she exclaimed in surprise. What are you doing? Sakura-chan, you're too tired to get back on your own, he said simply. Sakura frowned and sighed. No, I can. No, you can't. There was a tone of finality in the Jinchuriki's voice. A few moments passed, before she nodded in acceptance. Let's head back, Sasuke suggested. Naruto bobbed his head. Hold on, he told Sakura as used some extra leg strength to compensate for Sakura's weight. She allowed herself to lay her head on his back, fully content with a smile on her face after a few seconds of traveling. The three were in a reflective silence as they jumped through the trees. The training was oftentimes brutal, but the results spoke for themselves. They had managed to outsmart their sensei, rather than defeat her with brute force. Granted, she was a jounin, and if she wanted, she could crush the three of them like ants with her hands tied behind her back. Even still, they felt pride, and it motivated them enough to get through in spite of the hurdles. I'm really impressed, you three. Naruto and Sasuke stopped suddenly, and Mikoto seemed to decloak like a chameleon as she deactivated her Maisegakure no Jutsu. Whoa! You got to teach us how to do that. Naruto nearly demanded. Mikoto laughed, oh, this jutsu is far too advanced for you guys, but I'll tell you what, I do plan on teach you all a jutsu, hopefully before you all go to the academy. Naruto was practically drooling at the prospect, while Sasuke was just content with a smile on his face. Thing is, we got to get Sleeping Beauties, she pointed towards an unconscious Sakura, sleeping peacefully on Naruto's back, stamina and chakra reserves up. This jutsu isn't really even taught to genin, yet. Sasuke raised a brow, curiously. She wasn't talking about that jutsu, was she? Before he could ask, she continued on, now then, you three head inside, and get ready for lunch. I know you're starving. Sounds great, Kaa-san, Sasuke cheerfully remarked. The two headed wordlessly back into the estate kitchen. They'd wake Sakura up when they got there. Mikoto sighed, before she felt a familiar presence behind her. So, what do I owe the pleasure of you visiting, my dear husband? The sarcasm was practically dripping from her voice. Mikoto, she turned around, and sure enough, standing there was Fugaku Uchiha, father of Sasuke and Itachi, and husband of Mikoto. Honestly, he looked nothing like his sons with his gruff appearance, as they took more after their mother than they did him, a fact that he was a bit resentful for, but he never voiced that. What is it that you want, Fugaku? She asked a bit coldly. Mikoto loved her husband, she truly did, but some of his actions as of late disgusted the Uchiha matriarch to no end, how he put Itachi on a pedestal, and outright ignored his younger son. This meant she had to pick up the scraps and slowly but surely pick his self-esteem back up. Admittedly, the lack of sex in a good long while also added to the reasons why she didn't feel like speaking to him at the moment. I see you're training a team, he began neutrally, arms crossed over his chest, that has Sasuke, a civilian girl and the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Mikoto's eyes narrowed dangerously. He has a name you know, Fugaku, she stated, a dark edge beginning to line her voice. One had to give the Uchiha clan head credit, if he was afraid of women when they were angry, you could never tell from his facial expressions. Naruto, then, the clan head finally conceded. Although Mikoto wanted to smile at her victory, she was still pissed at him, so she remained expressionless. I couldn't help but overhear you when you said you promised to teach them a jutsu not suited for genin, he continued, eyes narrowing. You wouldn't happen to be referring to that jutsu, would you? Yes, she edgily answered. I'm going to teach all three of them the Gakakyu no Jutsu, Grand Fireball technique. I see, he neutrally intoned, giving a sidelong look. She crossed her arms, mimicking her conjugal spouse. From the way you're acting, it sounds to me like you have a problem with it. Mikoto, that jutsu is symbolic within our clan. How could you just teach it to them on a whim? The Uchiha practically yelled. His wife stood there, unfazed by his small rant. So, I guess you have a problem with most of the village's chunin, since virtually all of the jounin and Anbu and Hokage-sama himself knowing it, too, huh? She rhetorically quipped. Furthermore, isn't performing the technique a rite of passage? If anything, you should feel proud to have your son learn this technique at such a young age. Her eyes then grew to slits. Or is it you feel prideful about the fact that I'm teaching them a jutsu that's symbolic with us? Her husband's silence told all. She sneered. I see. So it is your pride. For the first time, Fugaku showed anger. Just who the hell do you think you are? He roared. He was the head of the Uchiha clan and he'd be damned if he'd let his own wife talk down to him. Mikoto gritted her teeth. Fugaku, she yelled, annoyed with her husband's subtle misogyny. Just what the hell has happened to the man I fell in love with over 15 years ago? Tell me, Fugaku. What is with your obsession with the clan's image? Do you not understand what we've gone through? Image must mean everything, he argued. Is that so? You want our clan to be viewed as powerful, and yet, you neglect your own flesh and blood, favoring one over the other? When spending time with both could kill two birds with one stone? Fugaku, admittedly, knew she had a point, but his pride made him refuse to back down. You know why I had to mold Itachi. He was a prodigy. I had to groom him into the perfect Uchiha and Shinobi. He then scoffed. Let's not forget, you could have trained Sasuke, too, but you never even offered to help, yourself. Oh, no. You are not going to blame this on me, she stubbornly retorted, even though he had a fair point. You are his father, you were supposed to teach him everything you knew, and you were supposed to give them both equal amounts of time. I may be his mother, but I can only do so much. He gritted his teeth. Aren't you training him now? The Uchiha matriarch scoffed. Yeah, cleaning up the mess you made. Fugaku huffed, but said nothing in return. He felt her embrace as she laid her head on his left pectoral. The clan head was left stunned by his wife's actions, but she spoke before he could voice his thoughts. "Fugaku," she began softly, "all traces of anger gone, you can still make it right. It's not too late. I'm training Sasuke, yes, and his new friends, but there are certain things only you, as a man, can teach." He couldn't help but notice her emphasis on that particular word. The patriarch couldn't help but smirk. She was stroking his ego to make her do what she wanted, and damn it, it was working like a charm. She let go and husband and wife stared at each other, although still in each other's arms. He sighed. He was at a loss for words. "Don't know what to do, or say," she deduced. With a look of dull surprise, he simply nodded. "Well, to start off, get to know him. You don't have to do anything big, just have a conversation with him. Ask him how his day was, what he liked to do, things of that nature." "Mikoto, you know I know. He's not like Itachi, Fugaku," she sternly interrupted. "True, he's interested in becoming a shinobi, but that's not all he likes to do." "Then what does he like to do, then?" Fugaku asked, hopeful he'd have a possibility of taking the lazy way out. His wife's grin turned into an outright smirk. "That, my love, is up to you to figure out," she emphasized by poking him in the chest playfully. Fugaku sighed, even though he knew he should have suspected this. He then nodded in acceptance. "All right," he conceded, "but could you give me a bit of time?" She shrugged. "I don't care. As long you make some genuine effort, I suppose one doesn't matter." But, her eyes gave her other half a gaze filled with warning, "Don't take too long, Fugaku. Every child has a breaking point. You, of all people, should know that." Fugaku bobbed his head, understanding perfectly what she meant. She walked up to him and gave him a quick peck on the cheek. "Just think about it, okay?" With that said, the matriarch headed off, eager to feed her son and pupils for a job well done. She felt proud of herself, and maybe now Sasuke could get what he always wanted, his father's attention. Fugaku stood there in reflective silence as he contemplated what his wife was saying as their argument replayed over and over in his mind. Had he really been that blind and neglectful toward his younger son? He wanted the village to see the greatness of the Uchiha clan. While they had respect, it wasn't enough for the clan head. He wanted it to be near worship, just like their Senju rivals of a different age. But is it worth it? Fugaku reflected, still at a loss. What is truly worth it? He was putting his sons in danger, and if his plan failed, then there was a chance that his life and his sons were forfeit. But then again, the higher-ups never trusted his clan. Hell, they probably thought that the Demon Fox attack was their doing. Being forced to move away, being spied on persistently by the village's ANBU, he gritted his teeth. What the hell was he supposed to do? There were pros and cons to both going through with the plan and scrapping it all together, with easily justifiable reasons for both of them, in his eyes. Add to the fact that his own wife was ignorant to what the clan was planning, and he had hell to deal with by teetering on the edge of a sword. He sighed and threw his hands up in defeat. He had much to think about. Maybe he'd talk with the elders and see what they thought. He took a stroll back to the estate, but headed straight for his private quarters rather than the kitchen. "I'm sorry, Sasuke, but you're going to have to take a back seat for a while until I figure out what I'm going to do," Fugaku thought remorsefully. At that moment, he truly hated himself. Mikoto was right. Just what the hell did happen to the man he used to be? He'd have plenty of time to mull it over. Inside the kitchen, around the same time, man, I'm starving. Naruto complained as he sat with his three friends at a small table. Although all three didn't smell well from all the hard training they had done today, their stomachs took priority over a foul odor at this particular moment. Sakura giggled, but she did have to agree. The cherry blossom was pretty famished, herself. She felt a bit embarrassed that she had to be carried all the way back to the estate, but alas, it couldn't be helped. That just proved she had to work harder. Naruto and Sasuke started talking amongst themselves, while she allowed herself to drown in her thoughts. It was strange, for the past 3 months, Tetsuya had left her alone. He hadn't made any attempt to touch her, or anything of that nature. In fact, the retired shinobi just flat out ignored her. A small chill went up her spine. She had come to be used to his tantrums and perverse ways, and for him to just suddenly stop, just simply rubbed her the wrong way. Sakura felt as if he were a simple viper coiled up in the grass waiting to slip its venom in her the moment she let down her guard. That's not going to happen, she thought, determined. Tender-hearted, the rosette-haired female was, but she was absolutely not going to let him get away with what he did to her. In her eyes, it was something completely unforgivable. She'd bide her time, and she, too, like a serpent, would strike her prey when the moment was convenient. Only this time, this snake would constrict her victim until there was nothing left to. "Hey, Sakura, are you okay?" Sasuke inquired, frowning a bit and breaking the girl's sadistic thoughts of reprisal. She shook her head, blushing a bit. "Oh, sorry, I was just spacing out." "You've been doing that a lot lately, Sakura-chan," Naruto observed. "You try being sexually abused and it not coming to the forefront of your mind periodically from time to time," she thought a bit bitterly, before shaking her head. "Oh, it's nothing, you guys, really. I was just having one of those moments." Naruto shrugged, not really in the mood to press the matter at the moment. "If you say so," he gave in to not broach the subject any further. Sasuke, however, wasn't having it. He was about to semi-interrogate his female companion, before his mom came in with a fresh lunch. The trio was practically drooling at the sight as it was placed in front of them. There was 1 huge bowl of rice, 4 bowls of ramen, 5 sticks of sushi, and a loaf of bread. There were 4 plates, 1 for each of them. The Uchiha matriarch smiled as she sat down with her pupils, opposite the side of them. "Dig in, you 3, she exclaimed joyfully. "Whoa! Mikoto-sensei. How'd you prepare all this food so quickly?" Sakura asked in bewilderment. "Oh, Sakura-chan," she wagged her index finger, "I'm afraid that's a trade secret," she grinned knowingly. Sasuke didn't look amused. "You prepared it a while ago, and you just heated it up with a katan jutsu, didn't you?" he deadpanned, calling her out. Mikoto got an annoyed twitch on her face, as she was caught red-handed. The male Uchiha simply smirked. "Damn, I'm good," he thought, completely satisfied. "Oh, who cares, Sasuke? I'm just ready to eat," Naruto hungrily bellowed. "See? Naruto-kun doesn't care how I cook my meals," Mikoto sweetly chimed. Sakura just shook her head at their antics. "Okay, you guys dig in," she premised. Itadakimasu, they all chorused before grabbing food, and they began stuffing themselves like they hadn't eaten for days. Even the mannered Sakura tossed dinner etiquette out the window in favor of satisfying her stomach. "Oh, man," Naruto said, slurping his noodles like they were about to jump out of the bowl and flee. "This stuff is great, sensei." Mikoto smiled. "I'm glad you guys like it. You earned it after a job well done today. I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting you to dispel my clone, at all. You've surpassed my expectations. I'm proud of you 3. The trio beamed at the praise. "Thank you, sensei," they chorused again, with even Sasuke calling his mom, sensei. "Sensei," Naruto began sitting down his plate and getting a serious look on his face. Mikoto noticed this and raised an eyebrow. "Yes, Naruto-kun? Do you have any experience with kenjutsu? Specifically, a katana?" Naruto inquired in a dead serious tone of voice. Mikoto blinked. It was clear whatever she was expecting, it sure as hell wasn't that. "Oh, wow," she blinked again in surprise. "Before I answer that, may I ask why?" "Well," Naruto said, pondering for a bit. "We were reading about Kyumo in the library a few months ago, and I was fascinated that a good majority of their shinobi were swordsmen and kenjutsu practitioners. I want to be ready for anything should I go toe-to-toe with a Kyumo shinobi in the future. And, he grinned, swords are just freaking cool. Mikoto had to laugh at the boy's enthusiasm and reasoning. I take it you two have known about this? From the beginning, sensei, Sakura answered. She hummed. I see, she responded neutrally. Naruto gulped a bit. Well, Naruto, you're in luck. I do have experience in the bladed arts. Naruto shot up from the table, excitedly. Wahoo, he chimed. But, I don't want you using a katana, she flatly declared, causing Naruto to sit back in his seat rather disappointed. Ah, he groaned. Why not? He asked, trying to keep his voice as even as he could. Well, mainly because a katana is way too long for you at your age, and its weight as well. You'd be better off using a kodachi for right now, and then working your way up to a katana when you're older and, she giggled, taller, she finished. Naruto grumbled under his breath, an action which caused his friends to laugh. Oh, cheer up, Naruto. You'll get taller for sure, Sakura said, reassuring him by giving him a hug. That means a lot, Sakura-chan, he thanked her, blushing a bit at the contact. Mikoto raised an eyebrow, and was inwardly grinning. Oh, I can totally see where this is going down the line. But, that is for another time. So what's the difference between a kodachi and a katana? Sasuke asked, a bit interested in the subject matter for knowledge's sake. He wasn't interested in becoming a swordsman. Hell, he'd probably wouldn't use any weapon, unless it fitted him extremely well. A katana is simply a standard weapon used by samurai, commonly found in Tetsu no Kuni, the land of iron, that you're all familiar with, Mikoto explained. However, a kodachi is a much smaller blade, about a third of the length of the katana. So, since you're saying that you want Naruto-kun to use a kodachi instead, I assume most of the techniques should theoretically be the same, except the swordsman instead must compensate for the weight for different types of swords? Sakura deduced. The Uchiha adult nodded. Indeed. However, there are certain styles that are suited for certain blades, and seldom do they work as well with any other type. Kaiten Kenbu, for example, is a style that emphasizes dual kodachi, using their light weight for faster attack power. Is there a way you can make a kodachi weigh as much as a katana? Naruto asked hopefully. Mikoto pondered on it for a bit. Well, possibly. We'll have to see one of the village's blacksmiths, she replied before seeing the blonde's grin. And no, we're not going until you three enter the academy. I still have much left to teach you. You do all want to blow the competition away, am I right? Naruto frowned, but nonetheless understood as he and his jade and onyx-eyed companions nodded. Sensei, just how are you so knowledgeable in kenjutsu? Came the query from the curious cherry blossom. Ah, Sakura-chan, it's easy. When I was a jounin, I was considered a jack of all trades, when it came to weapon arts. Whoa, hold up, time out, Sasuke held out his hand in a T-shaped position. Since when were you a weapon specialist, Ka-san? By the gods, he knew practically nothing about his mom when it came down to the nitty-gritty details. Mikoto's face was impassive. I'm an Uchiha, she said, looking off a bit distantly. But the Sharingan doesn't awaken in female members of the clan. The three could tell there was a bit of resentment in her voice. The trio wisely kept their mouths shut. As such, I had to stand out in other ways. So, I became a weapons specialist and learned as many jutsu as I could. While I'm not a particular expert with any one type, I can use them proficiently enough to hold my own in battle as well as to teach others. Sakura nodded. I see, she replied neutrally. What about bojutsu? That earned curious looks from her two male companions. It was clear that this was the first time they were hearing of this. For the third time today, Mikoto sat dumbstruck with surprise. Bojutsu? Wow, she noticed the look on Sakura's face. You're serious, aren't you? The rosette-haired girl simply bobbed her head. Well, she began, while I'm not as good with a staff as I am with swords and bladed weapons, I do know enough to set you on the right path. Sakura beamed. Thank you so much, sensei, she thanked grinning. Mikoto smiled and nodded and turned to her son. I take it you want to learn how to use a weapon, too? Sasuke shook his head. Actually, no, Kaa-san, he responded, which genuinely surprised his mother. I mean, it's not that I'm totally against having a weapon, far from it. But I want to have a weapon that fits me, if I were to ever choose to wield one. A kodachi or staff doesn't really suit me so, he then shrugged. We'll just have to wait and see. I see, came her neutral response. Well then, how about we? She stopped immediately after feeling a familiar presence. Strangely, her pupils picked up on it, too. Are they really advancing this quickly? Just what the hell are these three? Mikoto thought in pure bewilderment. A young man of about average height stepped into the room with a curious look on his face. He looked nearly identical to Sasuke except for his hairstyle being in a ponytail, and two scars running at a 45-degree angle on either side of the top of the bridge of his nose all the way to his cheeks. Itachi-kun. Mikoto called out in surprise. Standing there was none other than the Uchiha prodigy himself, Itachi Uchiha. Itachi and I-san. Sasuke cried, getting up and hugging his older brother. The ANBU captain smiled and hugged his brother back. It's good to you, too, Sasuke, he quipped in a mysterious voice. Itachi turned his attention to the two unfamiliar faces, well, really one, that sat at the kitchen table. I see a lot has happened in the 3 months I've been gone, the elder Uchiha brother blankly noted. Yes, Itachi-kun, it has, she confirmed. Meet my newest welonly set of pupils. Naruto Uzumaki, Itachi-san, Naruto introduced himself. Nice to meet you, Uzumaki-san, Itachi said politely, although already knowing who he was. The whisker-like birthmarks on his cheeks practically gave away his uniqueness. Sakura Haruno, Itachi-san. Sasuke-kun has told us a lot about you, Sakura revealed. The Uchiha raised an amused eyebrow. Oh, he has? He chuckled, poking Sasuke in the forehead. Foolish, little brother. Sasuke didn't look amused. Hey! Don't do that when they're around, the Uchiha scion complained, earning a healthy chuckle from all those present. Itachi-kun, will you be staying for dinner? Mikoto inquired. Itachi stood up and shook his head. He never did like huge social gatherings like this. He just wanted to do his job and have the bare minimum of contact with people. He already had enough on his plate. No, Kaa-san, he said firmly. I'll eat at a later time. Right now, I just need to rest. It's been a long while since I've been home. Mikoto audibly sighed. All right, then, suit yourself. She really hated how antisocial her oldest son was. Itachi said his goodbyes, and walked out of the room to head toward his father's study. Your brother seems cold, Naruto dully observed. Sasuke scoffed. Thanks for stating the obvious, Naruto, like we couldn't figure that one out. The sarcasm that leaked out was obviously a form of resentment he had toward Itachi, even if they did have some sort of brotherly kinship. Is the sarcasm really necessary? Naruto grunted back. Sakura huffed, shaking her head. All right, you two stop it, Mikoto intervened before either boy could start flinging any insults. Sasuke sighed and looked at Naruto apologetically. Said blonde simply nodded, forgiving him instantly. Okay, you three, we're going to do some laps around the estate. Mikoto snickered, enjoying the looks of dread on the three children. Come on, those laps aren't going to run themselves, she smiled, getting up. With a collective sigh, the trio followed their sensei for their daily torture. Man, was this going to utterly suck. I don't trust that kid, came the voice of the Kyuubi in Naruto's head. Having long been used to him butting in his opinion at random times, the blue-eyed Uzumaki didn't even bat an eyelash. You mean Itachi? Sasuke's brother? Why's that? Naruto asked curious. He gives me a bad vibe. Like he could snap at any moment. Although Naruto had known the guy only from Sasuke's description and from meeting with him literally less than 5 minutes ago, he still had to take his tenant's feelings into account. If he were perfectly honest, he didn't feel all that comfortable with the Uchiha heir either. He slowly nodded. All right, I'll keep a close eye on him. Good, the fox chimed, before smirking in amusement. Don't you have laps to run? The blonde simply groaned. He just had to remind him, didn't he? You freaking suck, you know that? The fox shrugged. Hey, it's your body and I'm trying to keep you alive for he heard Naruto growl. He snorted. Fine our sake sheesh. Damn right. Naruto replied before cutting off the mental connection with his vulpine friend. And now for hell, root base, location unknown, time unknown, Danzo sat alone in the comfortable darkness of his throne room. Multiple thoughts, schemes, and plots circulated through the root leader's mind. These past 3 months had been hell for both his health, stress, as well as his organization as a whole. As much as he kept his composure, Danzo knew he had to find a reprieve to let some of this frustration out in the wild. It was unhealthy, and considering none of his goals had been met, he needed to live until those were accomplished. How sickening, I feel like a big hypocrite as my old rival is, he then chuckled at the irony. Well, I guess that's something we do have in common. The dark room pulsated a bit as the rusty pipelines running sewage and various night crawlers were the only sounds he could hear in the near-deafening silent room. Truthfully, the crippled veteran almost wished he had let Hiruzen in on the loop with the ultranationalists and what they were planning. Then the plot with the Uchiha came out of nowhere and added another twist that threw him off balance. Every last one of his operatives started working around the clock to make sure Konoha was safe, abroad and domestically. At the moment, he couldn't decide who the bigger threat was. On one hand, he had the Uchiha clan, likely planning a rebellion. The consequences of such an action would be catastrophic, to put it lightly. Such a coup would plunge the village into dangerous civil war, one where they couldn't recover fast enough before villages would take advantage of such weakness. Danzo had no doubt of that likely scenario. After all, that was what he would do if he were in the situation. He shuddered at the thought. Sometimes, his own psyche frightened even a shinobi of his caliber. He chuckled darkly. I guess it would frighten me. I'm a diabolical genius, after all, he boasted of himself. Then, there were the ultranationalists, themselves. Those genocidal bastards disgusted even him. Treating those of other nationalities with scorn and disdain, believing they were superior in every way. Contrary to popular belief, Danzo was not a social Darwinist. In fact, he was the exact opposite. If he truly did subscribe to the mantra of the letting the strong live and the weak die, then he'd have no business trying to protect Konoha from the shadows. He snorted in contempt at the notion. If one truly did kill the weak, so the strong could live, then, most likely, a new definition of weak would take its place, and the cycle of pointless bloodshed would never end. In truth, Danzo protected the weak, the civilians and young ninja in training rather than trying to wipe them out. His NA program was proof enough that you could turn many weak-minded people into an army of unstoppable will. Those misguided fool such a blind ideology they subscribe to, and yet, they eat up their propaganda based on wounded national pride over an incident they had no knowledge of until it was publicized all over the continent, he sneered. He had read the pamphlets, multiple news media and magazines calling Kumo's attempt at the Hyuga heiress an embarrassment, and pathetic for Lightning Country and the village hidden in the clouds as a whole. Danzo knew that that kind of bruised ego for an entire country that backed those of the ultranationalists wasn't good at all. It was poignant. The sheer size of Kumogakure, which practically took up half of the land of lightning, had protected them from invasion since its inception, and they created a system that not only sought to give the people a voice, but to make the workload easier on the rakeage. Now that very same system was going to vote in a group of psychotic war mongrels that would destroy their system of democracy and plunge their population into war. He knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that if the ultranationalists gained control over the village, then Konoha might as well start an arms race to restructure more shinobi in preparation. They wanted to spread their wings over the entire continent, and damned if you didn't like it. Maybe this fourth great shinobi world war would be the key to bringing true peace, the veteran pondered before he berated himself at such an utterly preposterous and, frankly, absurd proposition. Of course it wouldn't. And as good as a schemer and planner he was, he didn't know how the other villages would react, who would ally with who, what situations would back another into a corner, and various other miscellaneous factors that no one short of the gods themselves could predict. War with them wasn't optimal, unless absolutely necessary. Shimura snorted. I'm becoming more and more like an extremist version of Hiruzen, I swear. Now all my plans involve spilling the least amount of blood, he mused. Speaking of plans. He wondered if his gambit had worked or not. Danzo felt two very familiar chakra signatures enter the room from the shadows. He smirked. They did have a habit of arriving the moment he needed them. They chose not to reveal themselves. I see you two have come back. Has it worked? So far, yes, Danzo-sama. They don't suspect a thing. Danzo's eye narrowed, but it wasn't like the two could see him, in the pitch-black room. No. Expect the unexpected. Do not let your guard down. They could playing us for fools and we wouldn't know it. I understand, sir. Good. I must say it pleases me that you two managed to pull it off. Sir, you were the one who created the clones, so we can't take all the credit. So it would seem you can't. But make sure all of our leaked info stays airtight, understood? Perfectly, sir. We'll keep the pressure on them. Very well, then. Leave. I wish to be alone, the spiky-haired veteran commanded. The two operatives didn't verbally respond, they only vanished back into the shadows, following their master's orders. Danzo grinned evilly. It was like killing two birds with one stone. Now that he had confirmation of his foreign plans working, so far at least, he could now focus on his next goal, eliminating the conspirators from within. You fools may sneer and gloat at Hiruzen's will of fire thinking you can extinguish it, but I'll show you my own wrath of fire, he vowed as his slight maniacal laughter echoed throughout the entire base. Fortunately, no one could hear the cackling of the extremist that hid in the roots of the tree that shone tall over the rest of the meadow. Kumogakure, 12th and 13th District Borders, Bolt Main HQ, 3.5 weeks later, 2,100 hours, Isu sat in a conference room deep within the main base of the Black Operations and Lightning Tactics Squad. The Black Ops HQ was strategically placed on the 12th and 13th districts, which most citizens more often than not used as distinction. The Bolt Squad was the village's first line of defense in the unlikely scenario of an invasion. The base on the surface area seemed to be nothing more than a simple one-story, wide building. In truth, the base went nearly 300 feet underground and had walkways that served as tunnels throughout the entire village underground. The facility was state-of-the-art, and the top brass made sure they were very well taken care of. There was no expense spared into making the village's most elite of the elite shinobi had a facility that was worth a damn. With recreational activities, and training facilities built to take huge amounts of punishment, there was really no need for any Bolt operative to go into town, unless it was to a special bar or restaurant they liked to dine at. In fact, a good 90% of the entire Spec Ops division lived here. Isu smirked that he had the village's most powerful shinobi under his control. He then sighed. However, all of that did come with a cost. They did have the job of maintaining parts of the village, and with the village being ridiculously large, private contracts alone couldn't support the village's high standard of living. For comparison, the 12th and 13th districts alone were easily the size of Konoha. A good many of the Kyomo shinobi force had to help maintain it along with the private industry, both domestic and abroad. Which was why now one of the reasons he had called a meeting with all of his lieutenant commanders. They were sitting at a rectangular desk about 3 meters long, incredibly thin, but sturdy enough to support many times its own weight. He sat at the head in a comfortable chair, while his 4 subordinates sat 2 on either side of the table. In front of each was a cup of hot chocolate. Isu's particular obsession with the cocoa drink was well known, and the 4 LCs had long been used to it. To his left was Sayuri Ichiso, the lieutenant commander of the reconnaissance division. She was a tall woman, standing at 5 feet, 9 inches, with dark navy blue hair tied up in a ponytail with her eyes being an extremely rare amethyst color. She wore a typical black shinobi outfit that was, of course, covered by her white haori. To the right of Sayuri was Kazanrai Kaz Ishiriki of the interrogation division. He stood at 5 feet, 8 inches, with short, spiky, teal-colored hair and jade-colored eyes with skin almost as dark as Darui's. His white haori was sleeveless, with dark purple diamonds that faded into the fabric. Underneath was a kimono top with dark shinobi pants and sandals. Like his commander, he, too, wore a katana, except his guard was violet instead of pitch black, and it was strapped to his back rather than his waist. To Isu's left was Mitsurugi Yoshida of the assault division. He stood even taller than Isu himself, at an astonishing 6 feet 7 inches. His muscular frame could give the Raikage a run for his money. He had long black hair that reached his shoulders, and multiple battle scars across his face. He wore an outfit similar to Kaz, with the only difference being that he wore a full battle kimono and samurai sandals. And, finally, to Mitsurugi's left, was the ever-mysterious Zennosuke Shimoto, of the assassination division. He had typical features found on this part of the continent: white hair and turquoise-colored eyes. A white scarf adorned his neck, and his haori was tied tight for maximum freedom during missions. The lieutenant commander only spoke when necessary, and preferred to stay in the shadows, both literally and figuratively. The 5 individuals in this room, counting Isu, 2 were easily the most powerful shinobi in the village, next to the Raikage, Killer Bee, and Yujito. They may have specialized in one area, but by no means were they a slouch in the ways of the shinobi. Sadesho, Sayuri began respectfully, her voice indicating she meant business. Time to put on a show for these fools, the LC thought wickedly. Go ahead, Sayuri, Isu premised, to which the cobalt-haired lieutenant commander nodded and gathered some documents spread out in front of her. I've been getting reports that there may be some foreign activity going on within our borders, she responded gravely, holding out a few sketches that assumed, from the insignia on their headbands, they were leaf shinobi. Isu saw Kaz's eyes narrow a bit, but said nothing. PFT, Mitsurugi scoffed. Konoha shinobi? In our territory with tensions this high? I don't buy it. He offhandedly commented. Sayuri calmly stared at the assault division commander. Lieutenant Yoshida, please refrain from making assertions, when you have no idea how I operate. Mitsurugi was about to retort, when Isu's chakra flared through the room, forcing even Zennosuke to open his eyes in shock. The 4 could hardly breathe as they felt the force of their commander's power. Enough, he growled dangerously, which chilled even the assault LC. Spare me the theatrics of your foolish inter-organization rivalry. I will not tolerate such ridiculous competition, especially in my presence. Now are you going to shut up and end this little charade, or do I have to step in and crush both of you? He threatened dangerously. Although fair and kind, when the commander needed to lay down the law, he was scarier than a judge sentencing a criminal to capital punishment. Sayuri felt a bead of sweat roll down her brow, as genuine fear swept through her being. Now, I know why Hideyoshi-sama is so afraid of him. His chakra output alone nearly caused me to suffocate. Unreal, am I understood? Isu repeated. Yes, sir, he heard them both reply. He simply nodded. Continue, Lieutenant. Sayuri wiped the sweat from her hands and continued from where she left off. As you can see, these aren't normal Konoha shinobi. I believe we haven't encountered them before. I obtained these sketches from one of my squad captains. He didn't engage them, seeing as how they were an unknown enemy and they knew protocol, not to risk it unless valuable information was obtained. Even though they were foreign shinobi, they had strict protocols of engagement and they didn't recognize their form of attire, adding to the mystery. Attacking them prematurely could have gotten the entire squad killed and the information would have never gotten to Sayuri's desk. As far as the four in the room were concerned, they could capture them at a later date. Sayuri refused to smirk. Hideyoshi-sama already had them disposed of. This is almost too easy. A black operations squad? If Konoha has an organization similar to ours, then that is troubling. Kazanrai commented, speaking up for the first time since the meeting again. Quite possibly, she agreed. However, I don't think these Konoha shinobi are publicly funded. Now the interrogator was interested. You mean a private army? What would they have to gain from spying on us? They're not getting paid for it. I see, Aisu replied, resting his right fist on his chin. Danzo, you've gotten clever, haven't you? He mused. Mitsurugi's brow rose. Danzo? You mean the old rival of the Sandaime Hokage? What about him? The very same, Aisu confirmed. Tell me you four, what do you know of the Na? Kazanrai's eyes widened. The Na? Sodashithi were disbanded, as far as our intelligence knew. Aisu shook his head. On the contrary, our intelligence confirms it. Danzo all know he's a war hawk who would want nothing more than the absolute dominance of Konohagakure. You really think a man is going to let his ambitions go away just from a simple command to publicly disband his army? Now what is likely is that the public disbanding was a farce, a ruse to fool enemies abroad. The Na often did the missions that Konoha didn't want publicized, trying to keep the mantle as the noble village, while in reality performing despicable deeds just like we all have done at some point in our careers. Danzo would be the only shinobi with enough capital to privately fund it, anyhow, or even care enough to do so. There was dead silence in the room, after the Hayasaka explained in great detail by simply using abstract pieces of information and pulling them together. Your power of insight humbles me, Sadesho, a compliment came a chilling voice. Kazanrai blinked. Did Zennosuke just speak without being asked a query? Sayuri and Mitsurugi were expressionless, preferring to hide their astonishment. Aisu simply smiled and waved off the assassination division leader. It's nothing, Zennosuke. It really was nothing too big, he humbly replied, to which Zen simply nodded, going back to his usual mode of being mute. Regardless, Aisu continued preparing to give out orders. I want these shinobi found and, if possible, taken alive. They could provide information valuable to us, as well as information the Hidden Leaf doesn't wanting us knowing. Kazanrai smirked. I'll get right on it, Sadesho. When we capture them, he licked his lips in sadistic gratification, I'm going to take pleasure in extracting what we need. Aisu was unfazed by his sadism, and simply nodded. Mitsurugi. Your teams will be on standby for the extraction of our targets. Yes, sir, he simply responded. Sayuri, continue to do what you do. The more information, the better. Sayuri bowed her head. It shall be done, Sadesho. She was inwardly smirking. Exactly as planned. Very well, then. You're all dismissed except for you, Zennosuke, Aisu commanded. He looked at him expressionlessly and then simply nodded. The other three vanished out of the room from their seats, not bothering to use the door. The commander and the assassin were left alone to their own devices. Sir? Zennosuke, keep an eye on Sayuri for me, would you? Aisu asked, to which the lieutenant looked surprised. You don't trust her, Sadesho? He inquired quizzically. I do, he assured. Booty do believe she's hiding something. What that is, I don't know. You're the only one with the skills necessary to spy on her. Zennosuke was a master at stealth, to the point where even Aisu had barely detected him, while he was observing. I see, he replied neutrally. Very well, then, Sadesho, I'll keep a watchful eye from time to time. That would be much appreciated, Aisu courteously thanked. You're dismissed. Zennosuke stood up, bowed, and went into a dark corner in the conference room. After a few moments, Aisu could no longer detect his presence. The wielder of the Thunderbirds leaned back into his chair and sighed. The things he had to put up with. He stood up from his position, walked out of the room and, to his amazement, Darui was waiting for the young commander. Darui? He said in genuine surprise. Who let you in? He asked flatly. The Jounin simply shrugged. I'm pretty persuasive. Aisu clucked his teeth. Right, he quipped, not really believing him, but not caring enough to probe the issue further. They both started walking toward the exit of the base. Any luck? Darui asked, getting to the point. Aisu groaned, not really. I've been stuck trying to get some free time. I sometimes hate this job, he admitted. Don't we all? Darui agreed. There's a bar in District 4 that's open. I could teach you some stuff there. A bar, eh? In one of the districts that's up for election in 3 months. Good call, Darui, Aisu complimented. Darui simply shook his head. You know I'll never get used to your ability to read motives and people like a book. Aisu simply allowed for both a half smile and a half smirk. Trust me, Darui. I wouldn't have gotten as far as I have without it. Indeed, the Jounin agreed. Finally, they had reached the outside of the base after a silent walk. Aisu frowned. The 13th and 12th districts weren't all that impressive to look at. It was actually the poorest district in the village, with each descending district number infrastructure improved. Naturally, most of the noble clans, the rakeage, the council members, and rich civilians lived in the first 3 districts, while the middle class and most of the shinobi population lived in districts 4-10. It honestly disgusted the commander that Killera never did anything to address this problem. The ultranationalists were going to take heavy advantage of that fact, and he probably didn't even realize it. District 13 was pretty much a sealed deal in favor of the ultranationalists when the seat of their current councilman, who was a member of the Virga, was up for grabs. Sadesho? Darui asked, breaking the commander of his thoughts. You feel okay? He nodded. Yeah, don't worry about me. I just spaced out for a bit, Aisu assured him. Darui shrugged, not wanting to press the matter. Follow me, Darui commanded as he took to the rooftops as they made way for a long trip to the 4th district. Aisu followed and kept up easily. Damn, this village was too big for its own good. 11th district, Kumogakure Streets, 2,200 hours. The 11th district of Kumo was buzzing with life as the residents of this region of the village danced in the street, performers were doing all kinds of neat tricks, and people in general were having a good time. This wasn't a special occasion, no. This part of the village there was always a never-ending party of people just celebrating life and enjoying it. Because it was a popular district to visit for entertainment and games, they were saved from the fates of the 12th and 13th districts. However, it all wasn't rosy and dandy for the famed district. It had a notorious crime rate, especially during the evening times at the more isolated parts of the region. The district was represented by the councilman who belonged to United Cloud. He flat out ignored the crime rate, and the rising poverty rate, and instead was simply inflating numbers for their entertainment economy. It sure wasn't going to last long, and the population that lived here was effectively split down. The middle for supporting the ultranationalists and the United Cloud. At this point, it could go either way, and both parties were campaigning heavily so the pot could tip in their favor. Stop, a merchant yelled as he was chasing 3 kids, a boy and 2 females, who looked to be about the age of 10, throughout the semi-empty streets. This was such a common occurrence that most of the civilians chose to ignore it, akin to the bystander effect. The boy had short white hair, a lollipop in his mouth, and wore dark clothing that was about a size or two too big. His two female companions were dark-skinned and the other's skin was white. The dark-skinned female had red hair and golden eyes, while her female counterpart had blonde hair and blue eyes. They sped around the corner, intending to hide. What they found was none other than a dead end. Shit, the ashen-haired young man cursed. They just had to run into a dead end now of all times? I got you now, the merchant screamed as he effectively cornered the three thieves. What do we do now? The dark-skinned female cried out, a bit terrified of what the merchant they stole from would do to them. The white-haired male all of a sudden dropped the bag he had held behind him. Presumably, it had whatever he had stolen in it. He gave them both serious looks. You guys get out of here, he firmly said. The two looked at him wide-eyed. Oh my. You can't, the dark-skinned female refused, to the newly named Omoy. Karuyu have to, he intoned a bit sadly. You and Samui need to get out of here. You both stand a better chance of escaping than all three of us. None of you are escaping, the adult roared as he took out a butcher knife. Omoy prepared himself to defend the two girls he had come think of as family, before the butcher was knocked out cold. He hit the ground, face first. Sheesh, just when you think the higher-ups can't let this shithole get any worse, something always tops it, a deep voice scoffed as he stepped into the light. He was around 6 feet and 1 inch, had scruffy black hair that with a short and thin Chinese braided ponytail, with green eyes the shade of an emerald. The man was dressed in a standard Kyumo Jounin outfit, except his flak jacket was more akin to what Konoha used instead of the one-strap version most Kyumo Jounin used. Adding to his overall appearance was a katana with a green hilt strapped to his back. You kids okay? He asked rather dispassionately. He honestly didn't know why he had saved them from the man. They were stealing from him. But then again, this place was a rotten shithole, and the rakeage and the council weren't doing shit about it. He gritted his teeth just thinking about it. Wo are you? Samui inquired, a bit distrustful. Sure, she was glad the man had saved their lives, but she'd be damned if she let her guard down in a town as bad as this. Obano Kusiki, the newly named Obano introduced. Omoy's eyes widened. Obano? The Obano? Kyomogakure's Emerald Fang? He rubbed his eyes. He had to be dreaming. Obano, Karui repeated, mispronouncing it. Interesting name, she admitted. Obano shook his head. No, not Obano, it's pronounced with a Y at the end, so Obanyo, he corrected a bit annoyed. It irritated him to no end when people mispronounced his name, even when he introduced himself first. Karui frowned. Oh, sorry, she apologized. The jet-black-haired Jounin simply sighed and waved her off, forgiving her. Why'd you save us? Omoy asked, once he got over the fact that an infamous Jounin had quite possibly saved their lives. Obano looked at them, with surprise. They still had their guards up. No matter what the situation, he always taught to never let your guard down even when it seemed as if the enemy was defeated. Like Shinobi already, I wonder, Obano simply shrugged, I figured you three wouldn't be stealing for any reason and the guy looked like he was going to kill you, so I simply incapacitated him. That answer seemed to satisfy the three, and they visibly relaxed. The Emerald Fang turned away from them. Well, good luck, you guys, and try to be more careful next time, he advised before beginning to walk away. Wait! Kusiki-san. Omoy called out, stopping the Jounin where he was, and he turned his head. What is it, kid? Well, thank you for saving us. Don't mention it, the Jounin waved off. He was about to jump off, before he stopped and sighed. These kids were likely stealing in order to get a decent meal. From their clothes, there was no doubt that they were street rats, orphans, most likely. A groan escaped from his mouth. His conscience was eating at him again. Then, a thought came to him. Hideyoshi-sama did say that we all needed to recruit the young. Could I really do that? Indoctrinate a couple of kids into our ideology? He thought as a twinge of remorse slipped through. He looked back at them. Then. Again, which would be the bigger crime? Taking care of 3 kids while force-feeding them an ideology, or leaving them here where they had no purpose and assuredly they'd likely get caught on their next stealing trip and possibly died? He finally made up his mind of which would ease his conscience the most. "Hey you 3, he called out, getting their attention. "You guys hungry? I have food at my place if you want." All 3 collectively went wide-eyed. "Are you serious?" came the bewildered voice of Samui. Karui and Omoi were simply too speechless to say anything. Obano had to chuckle at their reactions, but he nodded nonetheless. "I'd be heartless to let you kids starve when I have plenty of food at my apartment over in the 4th district." "You live in the 4th district?" Karui exclaimed in bewilderment. The jade-eyed Jounin frowned. Just to hear someone live in an upper district was mind-blowing to them. He felt humbled at how blessed he was. "I do," he confirmed. "Come on, and if we go now, we can make it by 10. He admired the Shodai Reikage as much as the rest of the ultranationalists did, but damn, if he felt as if the deceased Kage was compensating for something when he made the village as large as it was. "Just hold on a minute," Samui shouted, firmly narrowing her eyes at the Jounin. "Just how do we know it isn't a trick? That you won't turn us in?" Years on the streets had taught Samui to trust no one except for Omoi and Karui, of course. Obano raised an eyebrow. "Well," he began with a bit of sarcasm. "I did sort of just keep you from being killed when I could have left you alone. Now you have 2 options, you can either A, trust me enough that I won't kill you or turn you in and you get a free full-course meal and possibly more, or B, you can stay here and take your chances on the street for another day or however long you think you'll last. Now tell me, which one?" Samui bit her lip. As much as she hated to admit it, he was right, on all accounts. She then looked at her companions that she had known nearly all of her decade of living. They looked at her pleadingly. "Samui, please come on, what do we have to lose?" Omoi pleaded with the blonde female. "Yeah, Samui, Omoi's right, we've got nothing to lose, but everything to gain," Karui implored, backing up the only male of the trio. Samui grunted, they were practically begging her now. "Well, what's your answer?" Obano asked, a bit impatient. She sighed in defeat. "All right, I'll go." Samui looked to her companions and they both had looks of appreciation on their face. She nodded to them. "I just hope I don't regret this." Obano bobbed his head. "All right, you guys, follow me. Also, no complaining about the long walk. It'll be a while before we get there," he warned as he walked off. The trio of orphans followed the elite Jounin, hoping that this would be the start of a new life. These 4 individuals never knew the ripples of their gathering would cause in the tide of the delicate balance. 4th District, Bar, 2,300 hours, Aisu and Darui sat at a table observing the various individuals, shinobi and civilian alike, in one of the most popular bars in this fairly high-income-earning district. Aisu had to admit, a bar was the last place he expected to be observing to learn how to save Kyumo from the ultranationalists. They both had left clones to watch over Ayasaki, just as Darui always did when he went out into the village. "Sirs, can I take your order?" a blonde waitress asked as she came up to their table. "I'll take a bottle of sake, mid-range in strength," Darui ordered. She then turned to Aisu. "And you, sir? You guys wouldn't happen to have any hot chocolate, would you?" Aisu asked a bit sheepishly. Darui rose an eyebrow while the waitress simply nodded yes. "Then I'll take the largest cup and the richest flavor you have," Aisu grinned. The waitress nodded and went to prepare said drinks that were ordered. "Hot chocolate?" Darui asked, confused and bewildered. "Aisu Sodiashoit's nearly June, almost." Why would you order hot cocoa? The Bolt commander simply shrugged. I just have a particular taste for it. It always seems to calm me. More so than coffee or alcohol ever will. Doesn't matter if it's 30 Celsius above or below. I'll still drink it. Darui chuckled. I see. You certainly have interesting quirks, considering you're the strongest ninja in the village next to Reikage-sama. He gave a sidelong look. So I've been told, he responded neutrally. Darui wondered what he meant by that, but they had more pressing matters to attend to, so he had saved that query for another time. In that time, their waitress had come back with their drinks. 2 coffee mugs and 2 containers filled with their respective beverages to refill at the ready. Darui took a sip of his sake, while Aisu poured his mug to half full. All right. Let's get to business. We're here to listen to political ideologies. Get a feel for what people are saying, that kind of thing, Darui began. You still never told me why exactly a bar is going to help us. Most people here are probably going to intoxicated. Hardly representative of what people in this district believe in, Aisu replied with a twinge of skepticism at the Jounin's method of gathering information. Darui had to shake his head at the naivete of his superior. Sadaisho, I see you've been too busy running Bolt to see what's happened in the past 5 or so years. Aisu grunted, but said nothing as Darui continued. The bar has been a recent shift of where most people talk about politics and their grievances after the failed attempt to capture the Byakugan. Aisu scoffed. I still see no reason why we had to capture that pathetic dojutsu, Darui sighed, but he couldn't lie to himself as he agreed with the commander. What was the point of capturing the Byakugan, anyhow? He shook his head. Now was not the time for that. Yes, I agree, he conceded to his point. But, now's not the time to worry about that. Point is, we're in a jam because of that incident and now we have to clean up Reikage-sama's mess unfortunately. Indeed, Aisu agreed. Darui was about to reply, when 2 customers, a male and female, had taken a seat at the table booth behind him. Darui gave him a look that simply told all he needed to know: watch, observe, listen, reflect, and formulate. Can you believe this, Kenji? The red-headed woman spoke up, throwing a magazine in front of her male companion. Kenji picked the magazine up, and looked at its cover. It was Ninja Daily, a publication that had circulated throughout the entire elemental nations and was headquartered in the Land of Iron. On the cover was a picture of the cloud headband symbol with a simple query in all caps: doomed? Kenji sighed and put the magazine back down in front her. Man, and I thought Mist was treated bad, Suki. The woman, Suki, grunted. The Mist never really had an embarrassment like one we had 5 years ago. I feel as if the entire world is laughing at us, she growled, clearly angry. Aisu was highly interested in where this conversation was headed, so he strained his ears so he could listen to every single detail. This is the Reikage's fault, you know, Kenji pointed out, but that did nothing to subdue her anger. That's what makes it so frustrating. He not only embarrassed us, but he actually demanded the body as retribution? What kind of blunder was that? We were lucky they didn't declare war on us. It makes you wonder if we even vote to keep the United Cloud in power. So far, they've caused nothing but trouble for us, both here at home and to the outside world, came his grim response. I personally think the ultranationalists would be better, Suki said out of nowhere. Whoa, whoa, whoa. That's pretty damn far out there, Suki. Are you sure you could support them, considering where they stand? He asked her. A good portion of their ideology wasn't that hidden away from the public. She nodded firmly. Think about it, Kenji. With them, they could likely restore our national pride. They could make Kyumo great again. But Suki, how can you be so? When was the last time we won a war with them in power? Or with the Virga, for that matter, also? She interrupted with a rhetorical question. Kenji stayed silent. That's what I thought, she said smugly. Kenji grunted, a bit annoyed she had won their little disagreement. Look, I don't feel like talking about this for right now. Can we move on to another subject? He pleaded. Suki rolled her eyes and nodded. That was when the two shinobi stopped listening to their conversation. Well, then, Sadesho, what do you think? Darui asked him. He didn't immediately respond as his eyes were seemingly shifting back and forth as he processed what he had just overheard in his head. Sadesho? Darui called out again. Isu gave him a grin. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. If you want early updates, check out Patreon. This is Fox Sage and I'm signing off.